Good to go.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jim Dill. I'm the Senate Chair of the Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry Committee. I want to welcome everybody. Today's session is work sessions, and we've got 7, I think, work sessions to do today, and a vote on LD 1295, which we'll do first. A quick vote, just a re-referral. And with that, I think we'll try to get going, and I will start with Representative Landry.
Good morning. I'm Representative Scott Landry. I live in Farmington. I represent the towns of Farmington and New Sharon.
Representative Gifford.
Good morning, Representative Gifford. I represent District 142, and I live in Lincoln. Good to see you, Senator Dill.
Good morning. Thank you. Representative Schofield.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Senator Dill. My name is Tom Schofield, and I represent House District 112. I live in the town of Weld, and I represent 17 towns and townships in Franklin and Somerset counties, the good folks in the High Peaks region of Maine.
Senator Black.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Black, Senate District 17, which is all of Franklin County and 4 towns in Kennebec.
Representative Underwood.
Good morning. I'm Representative Joseph Underwood, Presque Isle, District 147. Good to see you this morning, Senator Dale. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Hall.
Good morning, Randy Hall. I live in the town of Wilton. I represent District 114, 6 towns in southern Franklin County.
Representative McCray.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm Dave McCray. I represent the people of District 148 up in the county. Looks like we're all going to be in Augusta tomorrow for some of that nice weather. It's not so nice up here.
Representative Bernard.
Good morning, Senator. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sue Bernard. I represent District 149, which includes Caribou, New Sweden, and Westmanland.
Representative O'Neill.
Good morning. Thanks, Mr. Chair. My name's Maggie O'Neill, and I represent House District 15, which is in Saco.
Representative Pluker.
Hi, good morning. I represent House District 95, which is Warren, Hope, Appleton, and part of Union. Thanks so much.
Senator Maxman.
Hi there, my name is Chloe Maxman. I represent Senate District 13, which is all of Lincoln County except for Dresden, plus Washington and Windsor.
Representative Osher.
Good morning. I'm Lori Osher. I represent Orono, District 123, the home of the University of Maine.
And I'm Jim Dill. I represent Senate District number 5, Northern Penobscot County. And our clerk is Cheryl McGowan. And our analyst is Karen Netto, and she will be summarizing all the bills for us. And I'm going to start with LD 1295, which is the initiated bill that is jointly referred to EUT and ACF. And we've had a discussion around re-referring this to EUT if they accept it to do it alone. So what I'd like to do is vote today, which would be contingent. Our vote would be contingent upon them accepting the bill to be heard singly by them. If they don't want to do it that way, then we will have to have a joint hearing at some point in the very near future. So with that, would someone like to make a motion to re-refer this bill to the EUT? Representative Landry? Yep. Okay, Representative O'Neill, and seconded by Representative Landry. Any discussion on that? And 1295, just so you know, is a bill about public lands again, and so it's one that we very, very similar to one that we already heard and spent quite a bit of time on and have a work session on next week. So with that, I think this, I think this is informal enough that we can just do a show of hands. First off, is there anybody opposed to it? All right, so let's just show of hands. Everyone want to re-refer this. So it appears to be unanimous. Thank you. And we'll just wait to get, I know they're talking about it today too. They're supposed to be. So this way it will just help move it along faster.
So Cheryl, do you have everyone in attendance? Because you will need to fill out.
Yes, I do, and I have that. My question was, you said $12.99, and then you said $12.95
Did I say $12.99? I'm sorry.
earlier
It's
today.
$12.95.
It's $12.95. Thank you very
I
much.
just made me slurring my words this morning. I don't know. So.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, with that, I will open the work session on LD 95, and it's only on the work session calendar because we've had a request to reconsider the vote. So I believe it was unanimous. LD 95, the resolution proposed an amendment to the Constitution of Maine to establish a right to food. And I believe Representative Hall, you'd like to reconsider the vote. So if you'd like to make that motion.
Actually, it's on the table at this point.
Oh, it is on the table. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
So let's
okay.
take it off the table. Could I have a motion to take it off the table? So moved by Representative Landry, seconded by Representative Hall. All in favor? Okay, it's off the table. Now, Representative Hall, I believe, asked for reconsideration. And it was tabled because I believe Representative O'Neill was going to reach out to Representative Fockingham. Was that correct, Representative O'Neill?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I let him know. I don't know if he.
I don't know if he's here. Let's see if he's out. And I don't.
He's coming. He's coming.
He is coming.
Oh, yeah,
He's coming.
he's there.
Yeah. There he is. Would you like me to bring him in?
Yes, please.
Okay. And would you like Nancy McBrady in as well, or no?
I don't think so. I don't know that there's going to be any real discussion on this. I think it's just just a revote for whatever, you know.
This is LD 95. I just want to make sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So Representative Hall, would you like to?
Yeah, I would like to reconsider this bill and being on the predominant side. I've had several discussions over the weekend and the past with some of my constituents and with Representative Fockingham. At this time, I just believe that this bill is not needed. And the only reason I'm saying that and what I'd like to change my vote is because I believe it's already in the Constitution. And we're just making another ruling to go into the Constitution, which is already there. So I guess I don't know what now is to make a motion or what we need to do.
You need to move to reconsider.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to reconsider the bill.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Senator Black. Any further discussion? We need to have, okay, so it's under reconsideration. Now, Karen, we have to have a new motion. Is that correct?
You need to vote on the reconsideration.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Up or down vote, yeah.
Just go ahead, raise your hand. Reconsideration. Yep, okay.
And so, yes, now you would need a new motion.
Okay. So can I have a motion? And the motion before, was it ought to pass or ought to pass as amended, Cheryl?
It was ought to pass as amended.
As amended, okay. Does someone want to make a motion here?
I move ought to pass as amended.
Representative Pluker, ought to pass as amended and seconded by Representative O'Neill. Any discussion on that?
That was supposed to be a secret Mother's Day
Being
present.
done.
Brought it to the house instead of getting
Would you call the roll, please?
Oh, okay.
You have to unmute yourself though, so we can hear you, Cheryl.
You guys
Showed up and
testing
started
me
talking while
today.
Representative O'Neill.
Okay, there's a box for apologies. Yeah, I was like, okay.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Okay, first off, remember to please mute yourself if you're not the one speaking, so we keep the background noise to a minimum. Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for discussion, I wanted to flesh out to hear from my colleagues what they're thinking, and I did hear that maybe it's already protected in the Constitution, and and just wanted to hear a little more about that thinking.
Okay. Representative Hall, do you want to elaborate at all on what you were thinking here?
Well, going through the testimonies that, in my notes that we had back, and this was way back in February, I believe, there was several groups that testified, and against, and a lot of it was due to that, this was already in the amendment. Just one, for instance, I'm going to pull out was John Harker's testimony that he said that, it's already there. So, why make another law or another rule that's just it's just contradictory to what's already there? I mean, that's my point. That's why I'm thinking why I am.
Thanks for sharing that reference. I think, I guess I just wanted to respond by saying we don't see a right like this appear in the Constitution. I think that's really clear. I would want to see what Mr. Harker referred to, but I can say with certainty that there is not a right to food or a right to save seeds in the Constitution.
A question I would ask you is, when you say we don't see it, who do you mean by we? That's a question I'd have for you.
Oh, I didn't realize that I used the word we, but I mean, I just have not seen it in the Constitution going through the right section. But I could happily pull it up to list what the rights are. A reason that I'm familiar with it is just from working on it in both the privacy and environmental areas. I've been taking a look at that section of the Constitution. So I have not seen anything that I think you could call a right to food.
Representative Schofield, did you have a question? You're muted, Representative Schofield.
You know what I did? I was muted and I muted myself. So thank you, Senator Dill. I've just been thinking about this as well. And, there's nothing in the Constitution that I'm aware of that says we have a right to sunshine and fresh air and potable water. I think there's a whole bunch of things that we have as unalienable rights that are not specifically defined in our Constitution, but they are God-given rights that we as human beings have. And I'm not sure that every single thing that we have is defined in our Constitution specifically. And I suspect that food is considered to be among them. And so I'm sort of thinking that Representative Hall may have some merit to where he's going with this. So I just I'm not totally one way or the other yet, but I'm thinking that we may need to rethink this a little bit. Thank you.
Representative Hawkingham, you have a comment?
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. And I just want to say that I understand Representative Hall's concerns, and they're not without merit. But what I want to bring you back to is that when the Bill of Rights was created in our United States Constitution, we began with a Constitution which basically laid out that we had these freedoms and liberties. But then there was a discussion about should they enumerate specific rights. And what came out of that was the Bill of Rights, which enumerated the right to free speech, the right to bear arms, among others, the right to not have unwarranted search and seizures, these certain things. Now, some people thought that you had life, liberty, all that. You didn't need to enumerate them. But where would we be today without these rights being enumerated? That's why they're important. And right now, we're talking about adding the right to food to the main Constitution. So what I'm basically hearing is that right now we can already do that. That right's not under threat. Well, the situation that we're in is that we need to have the foresight and pass this protection right now. Because if you wait until you need this, it's going to be too late at that point. At that point, it's going to be a threatened right. And people are not going to assume it like it's assumed right now. Now, already in places, not here in Maine, thank God, but in other places in the world, in other places, even in the United States, the right to food is threatened. And that is why I'm asking my colleagues to please enshrine this right in our Constitution and give it that protection. This is a high bar to get this protection. 2/3 of the House and the Senate. And then all we're doing is sending this out to a vote of the people for the people to confirm this. And I think that we would really be missing the boat if we do not enshrine this, if we do not enumerate this right now, because someday in the future, as I've warned, it may be a long ways away. It may be a not so distant future. It may never happen. But the good thing about doing this is if we protect this, people will have a right to food. They will have a right to raise food. They'll have the right to slaughter and butcher their own food. They'll have the right to save seeds. They will be given these protections. And because someday future generations may not assume them like they're being assumed right now. So I hope Representative Hall and Schofield, I hope you guys will vote today, basically just to confirm your previous vote that you've already made and pass this in the committee today and let the legislature vote on it. Thank you.
Representative Landry, did I see your hand? No. Representative Bernard?
Thank you very much, Senator Dill. May I ask a question of Representative Fockingham?
Sure.
Okay. Representative Fockingham, you mentioned that there were other states who are facing threat. Can you elaborate on that just a little bit, please?
Yes, I can. In the state of Oregon, there is a fairly big animal rights movement that is happening that is seeking to infringe on people's rights to raise cattle. The same movement that is apologize. They are seeking to infringe on people's rights to raise cattle. They are using reasoning such as animal cruelty, and they are also terming things like castration and in vitro fertilization as sexual assault on the cows. This is happening in the United States. So that's the answer to your question.
Any further discussion? Seeing none. Cheryl, would you please call the roll? This ought to pass as amended.
LD 95 ought to pass as amended.
Representative Dill?
Yep.
What you do, could we just get the amendment, please? What is the amendment? I don't recall that. Thank you.
Sure. Cheryl, do you have it there? Or Karen?
I can get it. Yep. Are you getting it?
I have it.
Okay.
So basically, I'm just trying to look for the original bill so in line 6 of the bill, it just adds the phrase after unalienable unalienable right to, and the amendment adds food, comma, including the right to. And then there is a fiscal note, because if the average ballot length is longer, because if the number of size of referendum questions requires production of a second ballot, then there would be an additional appropriation required. So there is a fiscal note as well. So that's the amendment.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions before we vote? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Senator James Dill.
Yes.
Senator James Dill, yes, ought to pass as amended. Senator Russell Black.
No.
Senator Russell Black, no. Senator Chloe Maxman.
Yes.
Senator Chloe Maxman, yes. Representative Maggie O'Neill.
Yes.
Representative Maggie O'Neill, yes. Representative Randall Hall.
No.
Representative Randall Hall, no. Representative Scott Landry.
Yes.
Representative Scott Landry, yes. Representative Joseph Underwood.
No.
Representative Joseph Underwood, no. Representative Thomas Schofield.
Yes.
Representative Thomas Schofield, yes. Representative Lori Osher.
Yes.
Representative Lori Osher, yes. Representative Bill Pluker.
Yes.
Representative Bill Pluker, yes. Representative Jeffrey Gifford.
Yes.
Representative Jeffrey Gifford, yes. Representative David McCray.
Yes.
Representative David McCray, yes. Representative Susan Bernard.
Yes.
Representative Susan Bernard, yes. Should be 10 yes and 3 no.
Okay, on the issue of LD 95, a resolution proposing amendment to the Constitution of Maine to establish a right to food on the reconsideration vote. It passes 10-3, and we will move on to our next. Yes.
And I'm assuming the minority
yeah.
report is not to pass?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, ought not to pass. Okay. I will open up the work session on LD 125, an act to prohibit the aerial spraying of glyphosate and other synthetic herbicides for the purpose of silviculture. And is that tabled?
Yes.
Can I have a motion to take this off the table, please? It's been moved by Representative Ocean, seconded by Representative Underwood. All in favor of taking it off the table, just raise your hand, please. Okay, it's off the table. So Karen, would you bring us up to date?
So this bill proposes to prohibit the aerial application of glyphosate or other synthetic herbicides for the purpose of silviculture, including reforestation, regeneration, or vegetation control after a timber harvest. So the public hearing was at the beginning of March. We had a work session middle of March, and this is the second work session. So I guess there were a lot of information requests for the first work session, and there were quite a few more in addition at the second work session. And so I sent you last night an email from Irving, as well as an email from the department that they had sent actually at the beginning of April, but I thought I'd send it to you all again last night. And then just this morning, we got another email from Maine Forest Products Council addressing some of those questions. But the only thing I want to bring up is I did raise this in my original bill analysis that, you know, there's 3 sections to the bill. Section 1 in Title 7, the prohibition is clear in law. Section 2 directs the commissioner to adopt rules to incorporate the prohibition. And this is in Title 12 under the Forest Practices Act. But I think it actually, I guess it creates a little confusion for me from a drafting perspective, because if you have the clear prohibition in Title VII, but then in this other title, you're saying that it'll be prohibited by rule, does this mean without the rule, it's not, may not be prohibited? Can the rule modify what's in Title VII? So I think there's a little bit of murkiness there. And I did actually propose, or have some suggested language changes to achieve the same thing, but accomplish it in what I think is a clearer way. So that's in the bill analysis, and we can get to that later once you're ready to vote. But I think I'm not going to go over all of the information requests. I think if you looked at the department's email response, they actually have my original email to them, and then their responses are in red, and there were 4 attachments to the email. So I think I'll leave it at that for now, and I'm sure there are lots of folks in the attendees. I see Director Patterson, Patrick Strauch, Anthony Horahan, and I'm assuming Patty Cormier is there. Yep, I see her there as well. So that's all I have for now.
Okay. Are there any questions for Karen? Is there anyone that anybody wants to hear from directly? I've been seeing a lot of things floating around on this. Representative McCray.
Yes, good morning. I would like, I've talked with the department, and I would like to have someone come in that can delineate what the setbacks already in statute or rule are regarding the cutting of trees and aerial spraying or spraying in general.
Okay, so would you let in Representative, let's see, would you let in please Director Cormier and Director Patterson? Perhaps they can address each of those needs. One was on setbacks for pesticides, was that correct, Representative? And the other one was on cutting?
Yes.
From sensitive areas, streams, lakes, etc., right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. As soon as they get in, we'll have you ask your questions.
Who else did you want, Senator Dill?
Director Patterson and Director Cormier.
Thank
Patty
you.
Cormier.
Yep, thank you.
We may as well start with, whoops, I thought I saw Director Patterson, but now she's gone.
No, she's there.
Oh, there she is. We'll start with you. Can you tell us, Representative McCray, you want to ask your question of her directly on pesticides?
Well, I'd like to set the stage a little bit first so that we can get more clear answers as to where I'd like to go. Okay. Back some time ago, we worked on a bill that had to do with these same sprays on playgrounds and parks and stuff like this, where kids were going to be rolling and tackling each other and wrestling and having a grand old time. And there aren't a lot of us that really thought that spraying in those areas was a great idea. And I firmly believe that. That actually solidified my feelings on these sprays. When I look at it with kids and playgrounds and stuff like that, it's like, no, no, never, never, There's quite a difference between that and spraying up in the forest. I mean, to say there's no difference is well, it just is. It's different. So I asked questions at the last work session regarding setbacks, and have had some discussions regarding those since then with members of the industry, etc. And I'm still a little confused as to what is exactly out there for setbacks. Okay, what is in place, rule or statute? Either place, because they're applicable to the industry. So my tactic here, my end goal will be to have this list of setbacks that are in place now not by the industry, but by the department. Once we've got that list of those and what those setbacks are, I would like to ask to table this for no more than a week or sometime set in the near future, and have the department and the industry look at those setbacks and increase them as much as possible. None of us like pesticides. They're not a good thing, but they may be a necessary tool. So what I'm looking for is to get as much out of this bill as is possible without losing it. Okay, so when that comes back to us, in my mind, when that comes back to us, we will be armed with a lot of information and maybe offers of improvement from the industry. And if those are enough, I would be prepared to offer an amendment that would include those increases. That's my thinking. Okay, the committee being wise and not older, but wiser maybe, I would very much like to have that input, and therefore either Director Patterson or who else do we have in?
Director Cormier.
Either or both, I would very much like to have them address that. Thank you.
Director Patterson, can you talk about the pesticide setbacks from sensitive areas, occupied buildings, rivers, lakes, etc., please?
Sure. So I think, the easy, good morning, Megan Patterson. I'm the director of the Board of Pesticides Control. With regard to setbacks from water, the setback in rule, currently in rule, is 25 feet for broadcast applications. And then for mixing and loading of pesticides, it's 50 feet from water, from the mean high water mark. And then, of course, I think, we've gone over this with all of you before, but the specific bodies of water are listed in rule as well, in order to provide clarification, so that applicators have some sense of being able to recognize what it is they're setting back from.
Okay, Representative McCray.
Yes. So, Director Patterson, that's 25 feet from any water as far as application?
Yeah, so it's so in rule it says 25 feet for broadcast applications within, let's see, any lake pond. It actually goes on. I don't know if it'd be better for me to provide you the rule, or if you'd prefer me to read it to you. Well, I don't want to bore you to death.
my concern is, and I'm caught in the confusion already. Okay. Sure. It has been my understanding through the discussions of this that there are some 25s and 75s and 250s and all of this, all pertaining to sensitive lands, marshlands, ponds, rivers, temporary streams, great ponds, whatever. And it seems to me that that list is considerably longer, I'll do it that way, considerably longer than the mixing and loading and the 25-foot rule on broadcast.
Yeah, I think we would consider it the same list for both of those two things, the 25-foot setback and the 50-foot setback. I mean, with regard to how we would enforce it, it would pertain to the same bodies of water. So I don't know that there's, I see the difference, but it's certainly 25 feet as a setback for broadcast applications, and then 50 feet as a setback for mixing and loading from the same bodies of waters.
From all bodies of water.
From those same, so we don't have authority over all bodies of water, but we have specific bodies of water listed in rule, rather than pointing people to the explanation of waters of the state that's in the DEP rule. The board at some point in the past decided to provide a simplified version so that people could actually read it and identify those bodies of water to ensure compliance.
So in order to put this together, let's say in a week, we would need to include DEP if this is to go anywhere that would be meaningful.
I guess if you feel that the existing language and rule is inadequate, I guess that would be a consideration. But what I can tell you, so the bodies of water, so maybe it's just best that I read them for you.
Okay.
So the bodies of water that are in rural are rivers, any lake or pond except ponds that are confined and retained completely upon the property of one person and do not drain into or have a superficial connection with any other waters of the state. We do reference waters of the state in our rules. Any stream depicted as a solid or broken line, blue line on the most recent edition of the U.S. Geological 7.5-minute topographic series, or if not available, a 15-minute series topographic map. Estuarine and marine waters is defined under 38 MRSA subsection 361-A5, or wetlands except man-made wetlands that are designed and managed for agricultural purposes, which are connected to great ponds at any time of the year, or characterized by visible surface water, or dominated by emergent or aquatic plants. And so that's the list that we have in a rule that 25-foot setback and the 50-foot setback pertain to.
Okay, thank you very much.
And did you have a similar question, Representative McCray, for Director Cormier?
Yes, yes, please.
Would you introduce yourself, please, Patty?
Sure. Good morning, Patty Cormier, Director of the Maine Forest Service. And so I can understand your confusion with these setback zones. So for harvesting, it depends on if it's DEP zoning in a municipality, or if a town has adopted the statewide standards, Chapter 21, and it is based on the size of the water body. So an example, a typical harvesting zone for a great pond over 10 acres is a 250-foot zone where harvesting can occur 40% within the first 75 feet. And there are other stipulations as to opening sizes within the whole 250-foot zone. In a municipality, they can have resource protection under DEP, and which would include a no-cut 75-foot zone. In the Land Use Planning Commission areas, that's based on the drainage area of a stream or a water body. So for the most part, that's 40% within 75 feet. And it again depends on the size of the water body. I think it might be easier to give you a list that spells out the different options for shoreland zoning.
Senator Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand Representative McCray's concern. There's a lot of questions I think that people have unanswered still. There's a lot of information here to digest. And I've talked to numerous people on the committee, not all of them, but several people on the committee. And there seems to be some interest in doing what we did 2 years ago in really, and as Representative McCray has said, he'd like to see us come back with some information. Well, we're at the end of the session here, and if we come back a week, we're already beyond, our 100% report out time. I mean, we're at the end of the session here where we're, got to get our work done. I think there would be some support on the committee for allowing the department to create a tour this summer, and we could address both sides of the issue. We could go look at the issues that Senator Jackson had, and we could also look at the concerns of the industry, get it on grounds, look at these setbacks, with measurements in different places, have the department set this up, and we could turn this into a resolve, do the study and tour this summer, and report out a bill next year. I think that might be a good alternative. And really, this is an important issue, either from whatever side you're, whether you're on the side of the industry or you're a side of eliminating the aerial spraying. So I think it would be very helpful if we got some, important information from the department and a tour into the area that we're talking about.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Maxman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to throw out a couple thoughts. I hear what you're saying, Representative McCray, but some of the things that are sticking in my head are the reports that we've gotten that folks have seen the helicopters flying overhead spraying, and that one report that we got that the department sent over the actual transcript of the report, and of the guy who said that he was trying to go down a road but he couldn't because they had closed it for spraying and no one had told the public, and some of the other stories that Senator Jackson had told. So I don't feel quite as convinced that there aren't folks being affected by the spraying. And I think I agree. I mean, going up there last year or in 2019 on the tour was really impactful for me, and I agree that it would be beneficial for the entire committee to see it. But I think we do have enough information to know that glyphosate is really dangerous, and that I don't feel convinced that it's all being done properly. So I would like to move forward with the bill as it is.
Representative McCray, do you have your hand up again, or is it still left up?
No, sometimes it goes back. No, I'm good. Thank you.
Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to jump in and echo what Senator Maxman said in saying that I do feel ready to move ahead with the bill as is. I'm willing to table it, once we're done discussion, if that would work for Representative McCray to go through his process. I do want to say on mic that it doesn't feel appropriate to me to ask the largest regulated entity to meet with the department and come back with how they want to be regulated. I don't know what to say much more than that. It's like asking Amazon to meet with the IRS and make an agreement on how they should be taxed and come back with something to the committee. It just feels really inappropriate. And I think these conversations are about, I'll leave it at that. I think I made my point.
Representative Hall.
Yes, thank you, Senator Dill. I understand where Senator Maxman and Representative O'Neill are coming from, but you do have to stop and realize that half of our committee is new in this 130th, and they didn't have the opportunity to go on that trip and see like the people did in the 129th. So I can understand where they're coming from, as that we voted on. We've heard this for 2 sessions now, but there are a lot of people here that are new to the committee, and I just think they need to have all the facts. Thanks.
Other comments? Representative Osher.
Well, I thank you, Representative Hall, for that. I love a road trip. However, I have a background in this work, and I can imagine from things that we've been presented what it looks like. It seems that there's been a lot of work done on this. There's the stories we've heard from Senator Jackson and people from that community, the communities in the North Woods, and also what we know about these pesticides and their impact and the settlements related to the fact that they do have significant impacts on human health. So I'm ready to move forward, even though I haven't had the road trip. I really appreciate the chance for us all to discuss this. I'm sure, I did work in the forest years ago where these tools were not as commonly used, and and people were able to produce trees, other mechanisms to do silvicultural work that produced lumber at the rates that made it worthwhile for them to harvest the lumber. So I am sure that I'm ready to move on.
Okay, are there other, yes, Representative McCray.
Yes, well, I think we're a little bit at a stalemate or a standoff. And I think that if the department and the industry at large, not a company, but the industry at large, could develop a chart showing the current setback standards, rules, statute, whatever, including DEP if at all possible. I know that doesn't give much turnaround. And then come back with a document, let's say a week certain, and then just move on from there, ought not to pass, whatever. I think we would be well armed. See what the committee wants to do from there. I would really like to see that chart and the proposal that we can come up with. I fear that if we don't have that, we may come up with no improvement. And I think we need to move this needle. And I think that if we can get some environmental improvements by doing it this way, I think that might be worth doing.
Representative Schofield.
Thank you, Senator Dill. Listening to Representative McCray, I just was thinking and listening to the numbers presented by Director Patterson and the numbers presented by Director Cormier. We have a 25-foot setback or 50-foot from mixing and whatnot from streams as far as the product goes. But we also have a 250-foot setback or 75-foot setback with 40% harvest. There's a bunch of numbers out there. And I'm just wondering, and perhaps this is for Director Cormier more than Director Patterson, but it's my observation, Director Cormier, that rather than do the 40% and try to figure out what that is, a lot of harvesters basically just stay out of the 250-foot zone as a general rule. And if that's accurate, why would we encourage or could we do something to work out the 25-foot spraying if we're not going to be harvesting within 25 feet of a stream? Would it be something to consider that we wouldn't spray within up to that limit? Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm trying to get these distances so that they're both as consolidated as possible. And your thoughts on that? Thank you.
Sure. So part of the myriad of numbers is that in the land use regulation areas that harvesting can occur within that 25 feet. So again, depends on the water body. So there is the, you're exactly right to say if you're not cutting that close, then why are we spraying? But that's where possibly that chart of comparing, how, in what area can you cut to, and is it in a town, is it in land use planning commission, might be helpful.
Thank you. That helps me a little bit. I was wondering about that. Thank you.
And if I could add your question of avoidance, certainly there's anecdotally folks who completely say, I'm just going to completely stay away just to be safe. And that's a big part of what we do in the Forest Service is to advise folks on those zones because it can be very confusing.
Because if you have to figure 40%, I mean, you have to go and sort of do an inventory. It just complicates things to try to stay within the rules if you're within the 200 or 250 feet, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Senator Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering if former University of Maine Professor Bob Wagner is in the waiting room. And could we ask him if he is about alternatives to this?
Sure. Could you let in Dr. Wagner, please? Dr. Wagner, good to see you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Could you introduce yourself and give us a little bit about your background? I think you testified before us in this bill before, but.
I have, yeah, it's been a number of years. So my name is Bob Wagner, and I am the head and a professor of forestry at the, leading the Department of Forestry and Natural Resources at Purdue University. Prior to this, I was on the faculty at the University of Maine for nearly 20 years, where I was a silvicultural researcher. I've spent most of my career working on early forest stand regeneration, including the management of vegetation for forest regeneration success. I've worked on this problem in managing young forests from the Pacific coast into Canada, and of course in the northeastern Canada and across the state of Maine. I also led a fairly substantial research program back in the 90s with the Ontario government to look at alternatives to herbicides in those forests. So that's been my area of research expertise. I've published quite a number of papers in this area. And I guess of note, one of the pleasures I had as a researcher working at University of Maine was leading the what is called the Austin Pond Study in northern Maine. And to this day, it's the longest running forest herbicide experiment in North America. And in fact, it was established just a year after glyphosate was registered by the EPA. So I've a few years ago published the 40-year results on the long-term outcomes of the use of glyphosate and other herbicides in Maine's northern forest. So that's in the way of my technical background.
I believe Senator Black had a specific question on, was it alternatives to herbicides? Was that what it was?
Yes.
So can you comment on alternatives?
Yes. There, of course, for vegetation in forests had been managed for many, many centuries using different methods, using animals, for example, for grazing, using fire, later on cutting tools, eventually engine-powered machines. And then about the 1940s, right after modern herbicides were developed, the introduction of synthetic herbicides to manage forest vegetation, which really started in the early 1960s and grew in popularity as more and more chemistry was available through into the 1970s and to present day, and is a commonly accepted practice literally in forests around the world.
Senator Black, did you have something else?
How do you see this bill affecting the silviculture in state of Maine, especially in the regeneration of young forests in northern Maine?
Yeah. So the issues of managing forest vegetation are faced by people that manage forests is very much scale dependent. So if you're a landowner with 50 acres, you can certainly take your own saw out to your woods and manage vegetation very successfully. As the size of the property becomes larger and larger, that kind of intensive labor is no longer really that viable. And that's when the alternatives that allow larger broadcast, more economically efficient methods become more prominent. And particularly in northern Maine, which is quite unique in North America with just the vast acreages involved if you're a forest landowner and you really need to manage either invasive exotics or trying to manage against American beech or other species that can literally displace more desired species for many, many decades, it's important that a tool be available that can manage that vegetation. And this is where aerial application of herbicides becomes probably one of the only economically viable methods by which forest managers managing large properties can physically negotiate and economically negotiate the management of vegetation. And I want to say also, based on the research that we have, is that the inability to use that tool can result in regeneration failures in various parts of the forest. Maine is very unique in North America in that we can regenerate native tree species quite readily without much intervention. But there are places where it's an absolute necessity. The going to ground-based applications of herbicides or other more manually intensive methods can be 3 to 5 times and sometimes an order of magnitude more expensive. And because of that large cost differential, the land forest managers just will not be able to use any tool at all to manage vegetation in early forest stands.
Mr. Chair, could I have one more follow-up, please?
Sure.
So how do you see that affecting inventory and production for sawmills and mills in the state of Maine with the banning of aerial spraying?
Yeah, well, one of the, as we saw with over the past decades, particularly with the last spruce budworm outbreak, where there was obviously a lot of salvage logging and harvesting that generated the forest that we have now, that if we're harvesting spruce and fir from forest land, what we learned in the Austin Pond study is that in order to return that forest, that young forest to spruce and fir, it is absolutely vital to have some kind of an early intervention. And herbicides are the most economically and most effective, both economical and most effective method in order to do that. And in fact, in many cases, we will just not be able to regenerate spruce and fir very effectively unless that tool is available. Now, keep in mind, I'm talking about in specific locations. Herbicides are expensive. Forest land managers mostly don't want to use them because they are expensive to use and difficult to manage. So they do tend to use them in those places where the professional forest managers just feel it's absolutely vital that they will lose this particular area of from being productive forest if they don't use that tool.
Okay, next. Thank you for that. Next is Senator Maxman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question for Mr. Wagner is, I'm curious what you see other places doing that have banned aerial herbicide spraying, like in Quebec, New Brunswick. How are they managing their forests if they're not aerially spraying glyphosate?
Yeah, with the Canadian, of course, I worked in the province of Ontario, which has a fairly substantial aerial herbicide program. In recent years, I must say it's probably a better part of 20 years ago, the province of Quebec suspended the use of herbicides in their forests. New Brunswick, of course, still widely uses. Nova Scotia has flirted back and forth with the use of herbicides in their forest. The record in those forests is that, and particularly in the Quebec forest, of really substantial regeneration failure, their inability to return many of their harvested areas to productive conifers. And they have, because the alternatives, particularly manual cutting, because they don't have the alternative for ground-based herbicides, since herbicides in total are removed, they're really unable to address the regeneration issue in many parts of the province. So it has really been quite a certainly forests come back on these properties, but they aren't the kind of forests that are that have the same commercial value for the timber industry in that part of the world.
Next is Representative Pluker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you just talk about the connection between clear cutting and herbicide use?
Yeah, happy to do that. The use, clear cutting is a silvicultural method by which most of the trees are removed in order to, by design, create open conditions for tree species that require, the sun-loving trees, and in order to regenerate them, they really want those openings. The use of herbicides can happen in any kind of forest situation, whether it be partial cutting or otherwise. The method changes, but as a general rule, when clear cutting is used, there is really a flush of what we call early successional vegetation, and that can be very competitive with more either trees that are planted or naturally regenerated trees. So not every clear cut that occurs requires vegetation management. Sometimes forest managers get lucky and the right configuration of trees are there and no intervention is needed. But there are circumstances, and I think just as I'm trying to draw on my memory, maybe a half to a third of clear cuts will encourage that vegetation, and it forces the forest managers to manage those unwanted competing tree species that come into clear cuts. But keep in mind, we're talking about one application sometimes in stands that are going to be 80, 100 years old. So we're talking about a single application that might occur in 60 to 100 years of forest management on a particular site. So just to put it into some kind of spatial and temporal context, as opposed to agriculture, of course, where you may be treating several times a year on the same acre to grow that crop. So as a use of herbicides in plant culture, what happens in northern Maine is about as light a touch as one can find anywhere in growing forests or in any kind of plant culture.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I was kicked out of the meeting and then just brought back in there.
Okay, because I saw you were gone. I just didn't know why.
Yeah, so
follow-ups?
Yeah, if I could.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Wagner, you're saying there is a clear connection between increased clear cutting and increased herbicide use?
I wouldn't say clear connection. There are many places in the Maine North Woods where partial harvesting produces just the same urgency for some kind of herbicide application, depending on the species that come in. But yeah, it's safe to say that there is if you clear cut, there is a tendency to focus that early stand management in some way that could involve herbicides. But as I said previously, it's not obligate that you use herbicides after a clear cut.
Yeah, we're talking about aerial herbicides. So you're saying that after partial cuts, people are using aerial herbicide applications?
No, they might be using ground applications in certain circumstances. Depends on how susceptible the overstory tree species are to a broadcast herbicide application. But it does occur.
Coming full circle here. So there is increased need for aerial herbicide application when we have clear cuts. We have a program in the state of Maine called outcomes-based forestry, which allows much more extensive and larger clear cuts. So we're seeing, does the increased size of our clear cutting mean that we have an increased need for aerial herbicide applications? And so directly to contrast that with selective cuts, which from my understanding, you're not going to fly over selective cut and spray herbicides from a helicopter.
Right.
And is that your professional opinion also?
Yeah. From the point of view of using aerial application, it just is not used as a practical matter except in clear cuts.
So have you looked at using partial cuts as opposed to clear cuts as a way of reducing herbicide applications?
Yeah, well, I think that's the record since the Maine Forest Practices Act was passed. It has produced a wave of partial cutting, and we can certainly have a conversation about what that has done to the Maine forest. But yes, it's produced a broadcast application of partial harvesting that does not elicit the same use of herbicides.
Thank you.
Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Professor, for your testimony. Before, or not testimony, it's a work session, but so can you remind me of your background? Have you worked with industry before? Have you strictly worked as a professor, just to understand where you're coming from? Have you had an employment history with any of these landowners?
No, nearly all of my career was has been in a university setting where I've led forest research and education. I spent time during the 90s working for the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources, so a government agency that managed large blocks of public land. And then from there moved to the University of Maine, where I was a professor. I did, as a forest manager, forest researcher working in Maine, I have worked closely with the forest industry simply because they own a lot of land. And my career has been focused on improving forest management practices. And in order to do that, you work with people who manage forests. But I've not been I've not been employed by the forest industry.
Okay, so you've never been contracted with them to do work or something? I'm just trying to get a clear answer, because I didn't hear like a yes or no, and I get there's history and it's.
Yeah, I mean, some of the research I've done has been supported by industry while I was at the University of Maine, but I want to say that's probably I'd have to calculate the percentage, maybe 10%, 20% of my research funding history has been involved forest industry. Most of it has involved funding from the federal government.
Okay, thank you. So just to get a clear yes or no, no. We experienced something with someone in a totally different hearing where we didn't get a clear yes or no. No, I haven't worked for the industry before, and then it turned out there was a different answer. So can you just give a clear answer?
I have not been an employee of forest industry.
Okay.
With the exception of back in the 70s when I planted trees for a forest company in Washington State, but this is 40 years ago.
Thanks. Thanks. Yeah, now I can ask my actual questions. I didn't mean for it to go for that long. So my question is, I'm hearing kind of a tension here because I heard you talk about a struggle with regeneration in certain areas. Maybe you talked about Nova Scotia, maybe Quebec, when herbicide is not used. And at the same time, you're saying it's not essential. And I'm trying to make sense of this. According to, like I'm looking at FSC, like a guidance document here that suggests following the precautionary principle. And it seems to say that that landowners shouldn't be certified if they rely on forest practices that create a dependency on pesticides. I'm reading things that say the FSC principles and criteria aim to prevent, minimize, and mitigate the negative environmental and social impacts of pesticides while promoting economically viable management of the world's forests. Management systems shall promote the development and adoption of environmentally friendly non-chemical methods of pest management and strive to avoid the use of pesticides. Forest management practices that heighten dependency on pesticides create maybe like a threshold for going beyond. I'm trying to see here, and I'm looking at SC.
Yeah.
We had these cited in testimony that that using chemicals as an expediency or an indispensable facet of broadly applied silvicultural prescriptions is incompatible with sustainable forestry. So can you just talk about how this works? Because it seems indispensable to me. And that's how I'm hearing it described when you're saying that the forest won't regenerate after a clear cut in an adequate way. So can you resolve this tension? Because it feels like we're really walking a line here. Either it is indispensable to the practices or it isn't.
Well, forests are complex and nothing is that simple. It very much depends on where you are and the problem you're dealing with. For example, where I am right now in Indiana, the central hardwood forest, it is overrun with invasive exotic tree species in the understory. And it is a normal procedure to try to maintain native species to use herbicides in the understory of partially harvested stands in order to maintain this natural forest. When we move to Maine's forest, that urgency isn't there at this point, simply because many invasive exotics have not occupied those forests in the same way they have here in Indiana. So it all depends on the situation we're talking about. You brought up FSC. FSC principles discourage the use. However, even in Maine, FSC certified forest lands around the world allow the use of herbicides and insecticides in order to grow forest stands successfully. So and this is true in Maine, obviously with the state of Maine, at least we're FSC certified. When I was there, forest herbicides are used in the forest. The same is true on FSC certified forest lands in Canada and across the United States and around the world. So the idea that somehow FSC certification excludes the use of pesticides is just not true.
Thank you. And just as a quick follow-up, I don't think I said a black or white no use at all. I don't think that's a fair characterization. But when we're talking about discouraged use, discouraged dependence, and when we see that the numbers that were brought to us reflect encouraged use, more acres sprayed, I'm just trying to get an understanding of that tension there when we had documented increase in areas sprayed. And it seems to me that
yeah, I guess I'm not clear.
I would like to please finish speaking. It seems to me that that we're justifying practices that are taking place, and I'm just trying to get a sense.
Okay, I'm not quite sure what your question is. You did mention a increased use of herbicides. I think if one looks at the long-term record since back to the 70s and 80s, that most herbicide use occurred back from the 70s into the early 90s, and there has been a substantial decline over the past 40 years. And really since for the past almost 20 years, it's been pretty stable between 10 and 20,000 acres of herbicide use. And of course, the Maine Forest Service can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm looking at some of their data. So I'm not sure what the increased use is. There was a brief dip in around 2013, and from 16 it increased. But over the long run, it's been pretty stable in Maine's forests.
That is the increase I'm referring to. The data presented, I don't know, I want to say it was from 2011 forward. We're seeing an increase, but I can go back and look at that.
But historically,
I'll give other folks a chance to.
Representative Osha, I've seen you waving at me there several times, so.
All right, I don't have a place to have the hand raised on my Zoom somehow, so that's why you get it in the picture.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I do apologize if I miss you, though. That's all.
That's okay. That's okay. Thank you so much for recognizing me. And they were having a conversation. It wasn't clear when it was time to jump in to request to speak. Hello, Dr. Wagner. Nice to see you again. Thank you so much. Yes, thanks for mentioning that there's this long-term research site that's been studying silviculture. I know how important that is. When I was a young graduate student, looking in studying agriculture and soils and agriculture, Rothamsted Experimental Research Farm for Agriculture was so important. And I was working at NC State, and we were establishing Yurimaguas was a long-term agricultural research site for tropical agriculture. And so these sites where research is done over time are so important. And I really appreciate you saying that it's been about, you've just done the 40-year analysis of these silvicultural practices. So I haven't worked for the U.S. Forest Service for 30 years, but when I did, now I can see why that these silvicultural practices that used herbicides were not so common, because it was pretty new then. So what I can say is that the tension, you mentioned the word economics, and why this is economically, this is the important thing to do. And the tension then in the Forest Service and the people who are managing forest lands where I worked at, particularly I'm thinking about when I worked in Northern California near the Oregon border, that it was difficult to find laborers to do the work, and it was difficult to access the sites, large tracts without a lot of roads in them if they haven't been harvested yet. And so there was an economic challenge of getting workers and getting them to the sites. But what we found is that some of the times that the forest was looking to, as it would be called, release the species of interest for silviculture and get rid of the species that are competing, that it was perceived that the problem was specifically these competitors, but as a soil watershed person, what we found is often that you change the hydrology of the system. And so no matter whether you did manual cutting or whether you used herbicides, that there were other factors that were causing challenges for your species that you wanted to release and have grow and build biomass. So I am very pleased that Representative Neal talked about the goal is that we would do forest management practices where we would not be relying on one tool, specifically tools that are chemical based. And as a person who's very concerned about getting more people to work, I'm wondering why that isn't something that was discussed. So you just used the word economics, but I'm assuming that you're talking about the cost of putting people in the woods to do this work versus spraying over large areas, and then therefore you don't have the people involved. So can you address if any of your studies in this long-term research also compare pesticide or herbicide use to the manual methods of reducing the competition?
Yeah, thank you for the question. In fact, I started my very early career back in the 80s working in Oregon, same area, looking at forest regeneration and comparing manual and herbicide methods because it was quite controversial there at the time. And I went on to lead a much larger program and look at more alternatives in the forest. And at the end of the day, the forest doesn't care what tools we use one way or the other. It's the tree, if competitors are removed, competing plants are removed around a tree that you want to have, the tree doesn't care which method of removal occurs. So really the choice of a method very much depends on the landowner and the landowner constraints and economics. Talking about alternatives, one of the big challenges we face in trying to encourage the use of alternatives is that, for example, with manual cutting, putting more labor out on the woods. A forest manager in Northern Maine trying to let out a contract for manual cutting will have, at the amount of labor that's required to do it, would have a very difficult time getting that labor. And even if they could find it, the cost of it is really quite astronomical. So as a result of that, forest managers have had to seek those tools that are number one, more available, and also number two, more affordable. And this is where aerial herbicides provide a much cheaper and available method of vegetation removal than some other methods. I've looked at sheep, for example, in the forest, and in fact, we can produce the effects in the young forest using sheep very similar to what glyphosate herbicide does ecologically. But sheep are not available. Sheep are very difficult to manage. Sheep have water quality issues, transportation issues, and other things. So the availability and the cost of the methods of vegetation management are really important.
Well, thank you very much for that. Although my first thought when you said, the forest doesn't care. I'm a soil scientist and I think a lot about microbes, and soil microbes certainly care whether they're getting sprayed and versus having sheep or having people come and do clearing with machetes. And only the last one maintains the soil microbiome, and that can be said for all of there's so many ecosystem services provided by the forest that that this is a very blunt tool using herbicides, and that's why we have a goal. I know that within our various statutes that say the goal is to do integrated pest management as opposed to using one tool, which would be pesticides or herbicides. So yes, and so in the Trinity Alps area, or Shasta Trinity National Forest where I worked, they brought in goats, and they were very effective in getting rid of the understory. And they take some management, but they cost a lot less per goat per hour than humans. And so they were considered a very valuable tool in that forest.
Representative Schofield.
Thank you, Senator Dill. I have a whole bunch of things rattling around in my head, but I'll just try to keep it simple. Professor Warren, I think Senator Black mentioned it, but I'm not sure if you did answer it, if I got the right information. If we eliminated the use of aerial spraying on these large tracts up in northern Maine, for instance, can you give me your thoughts on what that would happen to the industry? I'm talking about the lack of fiber in Maine. How will that impact us as a state going forward? The timber industry. I think that's something we as a committee are here to work towards the betterment of agriculture, conservation, and forestry. And if we somehow find a way to eliminate a tool that is useful, I think we should be concerned about the impact of that removal going forward as far as the industry goes, 10, 15, even 20 years away or more. Your thoughts? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as you mentioned that, I think about that. What the first rule of intelligent tinkering is keeping all of the pieces. The corollary to that is don't take away the tools of the tinkerer, and because there are equally negative consequences not having available tools. So, one looks at the amount of clear cutting and the herbicide use in Maine as a percentage, and it's a very, very small impact. So it's hard to make an argument here that if somehow we eliminated the use of herbicides, there's going to be a catastrophic loss in Maine's forest, because that would just not be true the way that it's currently managed. What will happen is that landowners that have sites of high productivity where they're able to grow very successfully high quality sawlog value material, or they want to grow wildlife habitat that includes a lot of spruce and fir. If we lost the use of aerial applied glyphosate in northern Maine, we would constrain on many sites the ability of landowners to produce spruce and fir forests successfully. And then ultimately, it would have an accumulative effect of reducing the value and the volume of sawlog timber available for building materials and other kinds of solid wood products. It's an accumulative thing. It's small, but if you're a landowner now trying to make a living growing trees, and instantly you are strapped with an inability to produce spruce and fir, it could change the economic attractiveness of the enterprise.
And I thank you for that. And I also think that, you know, if it's economically not feasible to continue to do that, and I'm not suggesting this would happen, but you know, subdivision, and they could pave it over like we have in southern Maine where you don't get trees growing. And we seem to do a lot of damage to our state in the southern part of the state, or have in the past. We've paved it over. I wonder what kind of ramifications that has ecologically. And here we are up in northern Maine, where this practice occurs once, maybe a couple times a century on a particular piece of ground. And that's a big concern, but otherwise it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, I will say that the biggest threat to forests in the country is development and the conversion of forest land into other uses. My fear, and this is as someone who has dedicated their life to researching and understanding forests and trying to improve management, is that if whatever we do policy-wise that decreases the value of forests and forestry incentivizes alternative uses of that land. And that alternative use is almost always development. So my fear in these kinds of decisions that you all have to make is that, is this a value increasing proposition to managing forests, or is it a value decreasing? And the consequences have been shown around the country of, you know, decreasing the value proposition in managing forests have pretty severe negative unintended consequences.
Thank you, Professor.
Representative McCray.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a reaction to the good Representative Schofield. I live in northern Maine, and I am not the least bit worried about so much development happening that we're going to pave the North Maine woods. That's just a comment. Mr. Wagner, I have it's a very elementary question. I'm sure it has come before us in the multiple discussions. How long does glyphosate, what is its half-life after being sprayed? I know that's not really where we are, but it factors into my head.
Yeah. The half-life of glyphosate in the forest environment, it depends on temperature and moisture.
Of course.
It's generally from 7 to 14 days in most forest environments. It's faster if it's warm and moist, and if it's dry and cold, it can be slower. But it is rapidly biodegraded in the forest soil by soil microbes.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Underwood.
Hi, thank you very much, Mr. Wagner, for your assistance in decision making. My big thing is I live in northern Maine also, and with a lot of forest fires from Quebec, we see smoke up here from time to time. And with this bill, how does that relate to forest fires in the state of Maine? Thank you.
It would be hard for me to find a logical relationship to any of them. But, you know, Maine has about 4 inches of precipitation every month of the year, and it's one of these unique forests in North America that doesn't have a dry period, which is why fire is so uncommon in the Acadian forest. So it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. We can have those climatic events that dry out the forest, but getting back to this issue at hand, the percentage of the forest that we're talking about is so small that the susceptibility of that forest to fire will be driven by many other factors than this particular issue.
Thank you.
Are there other questions for Dr. Wagner? All right, seeing none, thank you for your help. Oops, I see more hands. Senator Maxman.
Oh, sorry, to comment for the next, for after
Okay.
Dr. Wagner.
All right. Representative, do you want to question Dr. Wagner? Senator Maxman, did you say yes or no?
No, not for Dr. Wagner.
All right. Okay. Seeing no other questions for Dr. Wagner, then I will come back to you, Senator Maxman. Thank you, Dr. Wagner.
Great, thank you very much. Good luck.
Yes, Senator Maxman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was wondering if we could invite President Jackson to speak and share his thoughts on everything we've been talking about this morning.
Sure. Senator Jackson, welcome.
Senator Dill, Representative O'Neill, members of the committee, certainly enjoyed the conversation, listened to the conversation. I am a little bit struck about some of the conversation though about having another tour. We had a tour, we had a public hearing. Some of you were able to attend, a lot of you weren't. But we tried that. It was a bit shocking that the industry didn't want to have anything to do with it. I wanted to set up their own tour. Some of you went on that tour. Even with the department, I mean, I think in the original public hearing, you heard Director Cormier say that they were told not to go to the public hearing at the University of Maine, Fort Kent. No one did that. No one actually asked who told the director not to go. It certainly wasn't me. So, I mean, having another tour, I mean, as far as that goes, I mean, any of you that want a tour, I'm more than happy to take you this weekend and show you. But I think what's missing from this whole conversation today, anyways, I haven't heard any of you talk about the health of the wildlife, the health of the people in the area. Dr. Wagner said that it's not a very big area that's being sprayed, and I agree. He also said that it would be an insignificant difference on the overall economic impact of the industry. I also agree to that. What I think a lot of you have to understand is that there was only one company that was doing this for a long time. Over just the last couple of years, a couple other companies come on doing it. They weren't doing it before. The forest was absolutely fine. It grew spruce and fir in my area, places that we had fires in, grew back with spruce and fir. I won't disagree that it may be slower. I'm not trying to argue that point at all. But what's the impact to the people in those areas? And none of you live in those areas. And to hear things about setbacks and stuff like that. I live in Allagash, and I drive up the highway, and the speed limit is 75 miles per hour. And we all know it's 75 miles per hour once you get past Old Town. But I consistently see cars going by me at 85, 90, 95 miles an hour, and that's because there isn't any enforcement. And you can talk about setbacks, and you can talk about 250 feet and all that, but I know for a fact what actually happens, how it applies in the woods, and it's been like that for a long time. I'm not really interested in those things, changing those things, because it doesn't matter if it's 40 feet, 100 feet, 250 feet. If there's no enforcement, in the end, it doesn't matter. But what I am interested in is what this chemical does to the wildlife, but more importantly, the people in that area. I mean, if those of you that would have been able to come, I mean, I just took the group and showed you some of the places that had been sprayed, and there was water all around those areas. Like I said, they went into a brook, that dumped in the Big Brook, that dumped in the Allagash, and then that dumped in the St. John. That all affects the people around the Allagash, St. Francis area. And that's why, it's important to me, because people, I mean, if you can argue, which I didn't hear anyone today, you can argue that this stuff is perfectly safe for humans and wildlife. I guess there's no discussion here at all. It doesn't have to happen, but But I don't hear people actually saying that. It's just the opposite. I hear people saying that this is harmful to wildlife and harmful to humans. And that's why it's important, because I believe that it's getting into the water. It's being, sprayed in areas that, while it's a small amount of people, it's definitely people. And I don't think the department, I mean, I'm sorry, but I don't think the department actually sees what goes on, because it's happening all around my area.
Senator Maxman, does that answer what you wanted?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions or comments, or anyone else? Yes, Representative Bernard.
Thanks very much, Senator. I just wanted to ask a question to Senator Jackson, if I could.
Sure.
Okay. Senator Jackson, I just wonder if you have any documented health issues, human, animal, or otherwise, like you just mentioned, that are directly related to aerial spraying, not anecdotal, but actual documented health issues. That would help me a lot.
No, I mean, I never said that I had any, and I mean, what I said was that, the area is high in cancer rate per capita. And what I've witnessed firsthand is, the animals don't go to those areas, but I absolutely would not have anything scientific. I mean, most of what I've read on the subject is saying that glyphosate is not good for wildlife and humans, but I mean, that is all anecdotal. I mean, to be honest, everything that I talked about here today is anecdotal. Everything I talked about in the past is anecdotal. But what I do know, like I said, was that we didn't used to do this. It's become more and more prevalent. We used to clear cut before. We used to have fires that wiped out entire areas and growed back naturally. And I just don't see the benefit. And to argue that, well, this is some great thing for fiber for the state. I mean, you even heard Dr. Wagner said it's such a small amount that it isn't. But on top of that, we have a glut right now in the industry. Why we would want to do that, even if we do need the fiber, if there's a chance that it affects humans and wildlife, then I mean, again, we used to do it a different way. We used to cut a lot more wood, and we didn't need this. But to answer your question, no, I don't have anything at all that's documented.
Thanks.
Are there other questions, comments? Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to acknowledge Representative Bernard's question, and it was one that I had when this issue first came to us, and something that I've processed since then that I just wanted to say, Mike, was that studying environmental law and reading all these cases where it puts it on the person that's hurt by, by the use of chemicals, by some kind of environmental thing like pollution, to prove that these health effects have developed as a result of that exposure is really, really tough. It's tough for the parties to prove. Sometimes, there are a number of factors, and let's say you live next to a nasty factory, but you happen to have smoked, a couple cigarettes before. Well, then it makes it hard to say that to argue that your lung cancer is attributable. But I think common sense would say there's a risk and it's probably not safe. And it really is a matter of justice that makes it hard for people to talk about it and prove these things. So I just wanted to bring that into the conversation, that it can be an unfair thing to raise, to say to people living in the area, well, do you have proof? have you had this documented? And I think part of what we're looking at here, and in the previous work session we came to this, I had asked if anyone had documented testing groundwater. And we didn't have anybody come and say, yes, we did. Yes, we're taking care of people. So I think I just wanted to bring that into the conversation, that it's not the people living around this. It's not their job to prove it to us. I think it's government's job to keep people safe and to make sure that these practices aren't affecting health.
So, Representative Bernard.
And thank you very much. I appreciate what you're saying. And just to kind of round out that conversation, I think it's fine. And we should be looking at, we need to be looking at proof one way or the other. But if somebody wants to make either a bill or take someone to court or however it is, the onus is to prove that something did happen or does exist, as opposed to proving that something isn't wrong. So I just want to bring that up, that of course, if we're going to make some big change, there has to be proof of the necessity of it. It's how we determine a lot of bills. So that's where I come from. And I don't mean to say that their concerns are not worthy. They are worthy. But when you have to think about putting new legislation in place, we have to say why that's important. And that's where I come from.
Are there other questions, comments? Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Representative Bernard. Fair enough. And my question is for, during the last work session, we had talked about maybe having a toxicologist here, and I wanted to see if Director Cormier had someone here to say to.
I think Pam Breyer is out here, Representative. Let me look. She was. Let me see if she's still there. Yes, she is. Would you like to have her come in?
Yes, please.
Cheryl, would you let in Pam Breyer, please?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. There you are. Now we can see you. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. I'm Pam Breyer, the pesticides toxicologist with the Maine Board of Pesticide Control. What questions do you have for me?
Thanks so much for being here. Some of the questions, and I'm trying to recall them, and Representative Bernard kind of prompted that line of thinking, is, and not being an expert, let me know if I'm asking you the wrong question, or I'm asking the question to the wrong person, is what I mean. Some questions that I had asked were about the impacts of the spraying of glyphosate on animals, plants. Microbes have come up. Can you kind of give us a picture of what that does after a clear cut to spray long term?
I give like 2-hour-long lectures on glyphosate. There are so many facets. It's one of the most studied pesticides that we have on the planet right now. And I think a lot of people really don't appreciate how much science has gone into the decisions that are used for its continued regulation. And I know members of the committee discussed precautionary principle. That's one of the governing factors of how the EU runs their pesticide regulation and their chemicals regulation. And glyphosate is still fully authorized by the EU. Some member states have gone farther than that. But in terms of science's ability, regulators' ability to put the kibosh, it would be one of the most politically advantageous things, right? Is to just end the discussion about glyphosate. But you see repeatedly, because of its very low toxic status, it doesn't get regulated out of existence. Am I allowed to show some pictures in a work session?
We can allow that if the committee is okay with that. I think this is an issue that we want to see everything. Is everybody okay with allowing Pam to show some pictures?
Just a few, and it's because I'm a old-time professor type I talk better with pictures. All right, do you see my PowerPoint slide?
Yes. Nothing there yet, but it's just, there we go. Let's see what happens.
I have a couple things. One thing everybody keeps talking about is that glyphosate causes cancer. You have heard testimony from multiple people that the World Health Organization has said that glyphosate is a probable human carcinogen. Nobody has, so one, that's a half, it's true and not true at the same time. There's a part of the World Health Organization called the International Agency for Research on Cancer, IARC. IARC has the task of going through chemicals and figuring out their potential for carcinogenicity. That's one branch of the World Health Organization. There are two other branches of the World Health Organization that do not classify glyphosate as a carcinogen. So that's a subtle but important difference, because the Joint Meeting on Pesticide Residues, part of the World Health Organization, doesn't think of it as the same hazard potential. So IARC has been around for a really long time. They've been classifying chemicals for a really long time, and never has anybody really cared about what they say. And I want to show you some of their other classifications, because you have to keep this in mind. So glyphosate is a 2A in their classification, probably carcinogenic to humans. Other things that IARC has declared as carcinogenic: emissions from frying in oil, taking steroids, working as a hairdresser, and eating red meat. So I have been a vegetarian since I was 14. My postdoctoral work was in applied animal welfare. I could give you a lot of reasons why the committee, should regulate red meat out of existence. But, right, we know a lot of people eat red meat. That's a huge exposure to red meat, but we are not classifying it as something that we need to remove from the North Maine woods. And I'm not envying your position, but I think that when we keep talking about chemicals, is we keep trying to, we see the hazard, but that's not how we regulate chemicals. We regulate chemicals based on risk. And so it's the exposure. We know that humans are exposed to glyphosate, but almost all of that exposure is through our diet. So if you're looking at whether or not a human is going to be exposed to glyphosate from spraying in a clear cut, there was a study, and I don't know a lot of the glyphosate literature, but there was this one study from Indiana. They were looking at pregnant women and how much glyphosate they had in their urine. So in Indiana, you're talking about a landscape where all around you, like 90+% of the landscape is corn or soybean treated with glyphosate. And they took air and water samples and then a diet survey. So 93% of women had glyphosate in their urine, but it was determined that it was not coming from the air and it was not coming from their groundwater. That's just one study, but it's kind of indicative of what we know is humans' exposure to glyphosate is primarily diet driven. So that's one study. Non-Hodgkin lymphoma is another one. These are a series of slides that I've stolen from somebody from the extension out in New York. And in red, you have non-Hodgkin lymphoma rates. Oh, and before I forget this, 2 years ago, when I came in, somebody asked me for cancer rates in the state of Maine. That data is tabulated, and I think it got sent to the committee, and I can resend it in terms of whether or not the Northern Maine woods has higher or lower cancer rates or higher or lower cancer deaths. So that data is available to you guys. So anyways, in red, non-Hodgkin lymphoma rates, and then in blue, glyphosate use. Glyphosate really became a topic after genetically modified organisms were introduced. So here we have the year that Roundup Ready crops were introduced. If you were going to say that increased use of glyphosate would cause an increased use of increased incidence of cancer, you would expect these two lines to travel in the same direction. But you don't. We have a huge volume of glyphosate entering the environment, and that's really well established and recognized. And so in blue, you can see glyphosate use going up, and in red, you can see non-Hodgkin lymphoma kind of steady. Now, the most recent ag study where they're looking at about 50,000 agricultural workers and asking them questions about their exposure to different pesticides. The most recent version of that shows an association with an acute myeloid lymphoma, not a non-Hodgkin lymphoma, with glyphosate use. And so that's an area of interest. But to get back to the discussion you guys were having about pinning a specific chemical to a specific cause, that is so difficult to do. Like within pesticides, I can think of 2 cases where we've got a pesticide and an illness that are linked, and that's for Parkinson's disease. And the 2 pesticides are rotenone and paraquat. So let's go back to this. Things that cause cancer in humans, just when we're talking about how hard it is to pin an illness to an exposure, look at group 1, the things that we do know that cause cancer: smoking, exposure to the sunlight, drinking alcohol, and eating bacon and other processed foods. So when you think about moving forward with regulation, you have to know that just because something is there does not mean it's going to automatically cause cancer in the people. Reducing risk is really how we manage chemicals. One of the most toxic chemicals in the world, where it takes 1 trillionth of a gram to kill an adult human. It's produced by a bacteria, so it's natural. And we use it in cosmetic surgery. It's the Botox, right? So there are ways to use really hazardous chemicals in trade that don't cause illness to everything. So I think that's a really long way of not answering your question, Representative O'Neill. You asked about the effects in a clear cut. Oh wait, I think I have one more slide. This one. This is for glyphosate. It is a window into the data that EPA does have. This list, and I can go through some of the more interesting ones, looks at what EPA has looked at for its most recent glyphosate determination. And if you're interested in ever looking at the specifics, that's what the column on the left is, those numbers. And then you can see on the right-hand side all the yeses. That means that these are tests that have been asked for and received by EPA for glyphosate. But if you look at, so the very top ones are acute. Those are really important for applicators. And then you go down a little bit to a developmental toxicity. So 2 different species of organism, so a rodent and probably something like a dog, will be exposed every single day of their life from the moment their mother becomes impregnated, throughout development and throughout their youth. And then their progress is monitored. And so then you're taking blood work and body weights and how well they survive and if they're deformed and all that stuff. So that's a lifelong test. The reproduction tests. So again, chemicals can affect not just your ability to grow and thrive, but your ability to become pregnant. So the reproduction study would be looking at the ability to produce gametes, eggs and sperm, whatnot. And then below that, we have chronic toxicity. And again, we have 2 different animal models. And these are lifetime exposures similar to the reproductive study. And what's interesting with these is, so again, you are exposing the animal every single day to a dose. And then at the end, you essentially like explode this animal into parts. You're taking blood and urine, you're taking all the fluids. You're going to be taking biopsies out of liver and kidney and brain. You're going to be weighing the muscles and the fat and the skin and the bones. And you're going to be looking for any sign of a perturbation in the system. There's a suite of just looking for tumors. All the ones that say mutagenicity, those are not in animal studies, those are in lab studies, because the underpinnings of cancer, you know, and that's one of those funny things. You have to actually have about 4 different breaks in your DNA for a cancer to take effect. And that's part of the process of why it is so difficult to link a chemical exposure to a DNA, I mean, a cancer outcome. Previously, there was a class of pesticides that were really neurotoxic. And so you can see we have a screening battery for neurotoxic pesticides that glyphosate has done. And then general metabolism is just once it's in your body, how does it spread through the tissues? Does it sequester into bone? Do you pee it out? That kind of thing. immunotoxicity, so that would be immune system study. A criticism that EPA often gets is that they don't study the endocrine system and they're not looking for endocrine disruption. And the agency's response to that is when you look at this suite, and you look at, okay, just think about your day, right? When you woke up today, it was because cortisol prompted you to get up. You'll fall asleep when melatonin, another hormone, makes you feel sleepy. And so there's nothing in your life that isn't controlled by hormones. And if you can make it through these chronic toxicity studies and developmental toxicity studies without deviation. And so what they do is essentially they look at the patterns in the data for changes. So there is quite a bit of agency data on glyphosate. They do a literature review. I think that we sent you guys that 2 years ago with the most recent EPA review, but the agency does have a slightly different threshold for acceptable data. So, but they go through all of the data that is available and include those data that they think that they can include. So there's a basis for why these chemicals are allowed in these spaces at the rates that they are. And I would love to sit down with the committee and bore you guys to tears with like a day-long discussion of the modeling that goes into this, because these are the toxicity studies that are done, but then they're also requesting a lot of data on just how long does it persist. So somebody asked about half-life. Well, it's more than just soil half-life. There's different kinds of soil. And so the agency, they collect those data, and there's different decay rates in plants, on plants, in sediment, in water with sunlight, whether or not it volatilizes, how likely is it to accumulate in organisms. So all of those data, when you put it together and you compare glyphosate to a lot of the other compounds that are out there, it continues to have a really favorable lower risk profile that keeps it in use.
Representative O'Neill, did you have follow-ups?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, please. So thanks for going through that. My question when you brought up the graph with increase in use in glyphosate and about the same of non-Hodgkin's, where can you just talk about that that chart and what went into that? Was it locational? Was it nationwide? Was it specific to folks like we're talking about who live near and are working in these areas, eating animals, eating berries?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I can look it up, but I don't have that on me right now. I don't remember that much.
Okay, but would you say that would be important in evaluating whether that same kind of chart would apply to folks that might be more locationally impacted or through work or?
It would be a national pattern based on US data, and the way that you collect data is always pretty conservative. I wouldn't expect a Maine population to respond differently than a national data set, because the same patterns of use would be being used.
Even if we're talking about folks that live around and are working in an area like this, I just wonder if it's a little more specific than that, than your general subset, because I know what I would encounter, it wouldn't be the same, and my data reflecting me and my health wouldn't be the same, or folks in my community. So.
Yep. No. The average Maine person's exposure to environmental sources of glyphosate will be much, much lower than Midwest United States. So if those data were incorporating Midwest residents, you would expect lower incidences. You would expect lower exposures in Maine. We really don't have the contribution to glyphosate in our environment that is reflected in when we go looking for glyphosate in well water and in surface water. The New England region does not find glyphosate at the same rate that they do in the Midwest. So because of the differences in agriculture. So Maine land is what, 6 or 7% agriculture, where you're talking 90% in the Midwest. this 20,000, maybe 20,000 acres that we're talking about is something like 0.2% of Maine. And so the potential for exposure, where we're reducing risk, is based on exposure kind of independent of the hazard of a chemical. The potential for exposure and risk is really low in the scenario because we are just a treated state with a very limited use of this chemical. These chemicals. Oh no, the whole board is shooting up with hands, you guys.
I'll leave it there. All right, thanks.
Right.
I'm not worried about the spraying impacting my groundwater. I'm worried about it impacting folks that live there. So I think, I don't know, feels like a not consistent response. But.
Representative Hall.
Thank you, Senator Dill. I guess my question is for Karen, and I think that maybe we're hearing her talking about glyphosate and the elimination of the chemical. But my question is, doesn't this bill just talk about the application of the chemical and not the elimination of the chemical?
It's prohibiting the aerial application of glyphosate or other synthetic herbicides.
Yeah, you're muted, Representative Hall, but specifically,
Oh,
you're probably
I'm sorry.
correct. Yeah, you're probably correct. The bill is aerial, right? Application.
The bill is on the application process, not eliminating the chemical that in question.
Correct.
So we're
It's
talking
aerial
about,
only.
right. We keep talking about what the ramifications are of using the chemical, but actually the bill doesn't have anything to do with banning the chemical. It's just how we're applying it.
Correct. Next on the list is Senator Maxman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand that we're talking about how we're applying glyphosate, but I do think it's important to look at glyphosate itself. And at a couple questions for Ms. Breyer. I think I've been following closely the lawsuits around glyphosate and the use of Roundup, and my understanding is that none of the documents that the courts are looking at have been made public or integrated into any kind of regulatory process. Have you seen the documents that these multi-billion-dollar lawsuits have been based on that are showing that glyphosate does have a substantial link to cancer?
Okay, so I and others in the similar positions to mine do not understand the origin of those determinations. They're really baffling. And it gets to that, that very first court case, right? Where you've got an individual with an exposure and then 12 months later has stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's just how the jury came to that determination based on the evidence of how we know cancer progresses was interesting. But, when you look at those court cases, there was a huge emotional aspect to the story. And there's it's not surprising given the patterns of deception that Monsanto was using to try to sway the state of science. But here, I can't comment really on what Monsanto has done or hasn't done or how evil or not that they are, because that's immaterial to what we do, right? Like I look at what is the rate of uptake into a fish and what is the concentration in the pond, and will that fish suffer from that concentration rate? So what I am interested in is just the material science that we do know. There are a lot of really boring details of that, like the science of how glyphosate moves through the environment, how it gets into tissues, and what damages it causes. These are the really boring details of why none of you are environmental toxicologists that are fascinating to me. That's where I'd like the discussion to go, because it has been clouded by these judgments. juries have been wrong in the past, and I really don't think that in 2021 that we need to kind of revisit that concept. In particular, if you look at litigation around things, any sort of chemical, humans are especially scared of chemicals. And that's a whole part of my glyphosate discussion, is that this is an emotional issue, and it will be. Humans fear things they can't control. We fear things that we can't see. We fear things that cause irreparable harm. Pesticides hit all of our buttons, all of them. And so if you take medicine, prescription medicine, pesticides, you can have the same exact ingredient, and people's response to them will be completely different if you tell them it's a pesticide versus not a pesticide. So the fact that those court cases went the way they did is complex. I think it says more about what we are, that we're human. But I don't think it changes the science, because we're still left with a heap of studies. And I'm not saying that there are not studies saying that there is damage, but when we look at the types of effects, the concentrations that we encounter in the environment, there isn't that weight of evidence to say that it is too dangerous to be in trade. Yes. So I can't remember your original question. Those court cases, right?
Yes. Can I ask another question, Mr.
Sure.
Chair? Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I guess I would just like to say on my end that I'm not a toxicologist, but I've read a lot about it, and my questions are coming from data and facts that I've read and not emotions.
No. I'm not insulting emotions.
Okay.
I'm absolutely not insulting them. For me personally, you cannot navigate your life without responding to these things the way that we are geared to. This is why humans are successful, because we have appropriate fear. It is appropriate to be super cautious in this field. And I just interrupted you, and I apologize.
Yes. No, it's okay. I guess I still don't hear how we can. There's so much that we know that we don't know that has not been released from these court cases, that they have been sealed in record, and that really worries me. I mean, we're talking about over $10 billion. I don't understand how that amount of money could be doled out if there wasn't some real reason for it that went beyond just random unlikely linkages to cancer or other health problems from Roundup. But can leave that one there. My last question for you was, have you tested any of the water, brooks, streams, puddles around where glyphosate is being sprayed up north?
The state has a fairly limited water quality sampling program. We have a couple legislative mandates, and they run on a 4 to 6 or 5 to 7 year process. And they're always dictated by what has always been perceived to be a bigger cause, which would be agriculture. So we have a blueberry program where we sample near blueberry barrens. And we have another program where we're doing well water for residential homes that are always within a quarter mile of agriculture. So the state of Maine hasn't really put money into testing. We get some money from EPA, and that money is what gets used for our water quality program. So a glyphosate test is about $250 per sample, and you can't include it with other samples. So glyphosate testing has always been an added cost. So we have not tested the Great North Woods. We have started including it when we do our programs. So in 2018 or 19, we have a limited number of samples in the Penobscot Bay area where we're looking for a bunch of different pesticides, and we have not found glyphosate. So that gets into a whole issue of detection limits, and when you have some studies showing high occurrences of glyphosate, we've often used a very low detection limit. Not all labs run at that very low detection limit. So the answer is no. We haven't been to the North Woods, and we have not tested those streams adjacent to it. I think that was a possible consideration when did the forest audit. But the turnaround time in terms of trying to schedule a sampling program with those sprays wasn't feasible. But it would definitely be interesting work because what you're looking at with aerial is there's this assumption that drift, you have a plane and it seems really improbable that you could spray something from 100 feet up and then not drift for 100 miles across. But the industry uses a really large droplet size, it's much more akin to the size of a light rain. So when you have those, they drop down. They'll displace a little, but not displacing much. When you have a pesticide with a really tiny droplet size, then you can have drift that goes on for miles. But that's not what's used in these aerial sprays. But it would still be an interesting test. I'd love to be able to go do that.
Thank you so much. So I guess I would just summarize my thoughts for the committee in that there is clearly a lot of information that we don't know, and that I think is a reason to act proactively to protect the folks in the Allagash. It's quite freaky to me that this is happening. So I'll stop there.
Okay, next is Representative Underwood.
Hi, good morning. First of all, I'd like to say the Department of Agriculture, Conservation and Forestry, they do an excellent job of regulating the North Main woods. I've never, as long as I've lived up there all my life, I've never heard of a major problem of any kind with the department. The other point was that I wanted to make was the change in industry standard, which Representative Bernard alluded to, and I support her. You should have a really compelling reason to do that, and that has not been presented. That has not been presented today. So the only thing I wanted to say was I do support Representative Bernard in her statement regarding industry standard. You need real compelling issue to do that, and it is not government's business for us as a committee to step in and to change something that's been standard and regulated by the department for quite a while. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for the time, for allowing me to express my opinion, and have a great day.
Representative McCray.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm going to make a couple of comments and maybe a question. I look back to the 60s, Ms. Breyer. This is kind of aimed at you, a little bit of comment. I look back in the 60s and tobacco and cigarettes and smoking was almost promoted as a healthy activity, and you should do it. And now we have come to find some, well, 30, 50, 70 years later that, oh, were we wrong? So I am concerned about what we don't know. Okay, I truly am. Just as we should have been with the tobacco and its problems. So I see glyphosate as not something that you could drink, as some proponents a couple of years ago stated. I think that there probably are some problems that we may not even know yet. And I would rather err on the side of caution than to just blindly go forward. That being said, this bill as written would completely ban the aerial spray of glyphosate and other synthetics on the forest industry. That probably would be the gold standard to be sure that we were doing everything that we could do. The problem that I have with this is I'm not sure that we can get there. If I was sure we could get there, I'd go there. But I'm not sure that we can. So my concern that I expressed right at the very beginning of this morning's work session is let's get what we can. Have the department and whoever in the industry wants to be part of a 1-week delay, and have them propose something as I mentioned earlier, this is what we can do. If that's enough to take this committee from where we are now to moving it in a direction of that's what we can get this time, go for more later, that's fine. I mean, this is all going to be a state of flux over the next 100 years. If we can get that to the point where we agree, that's way better than nothing. Okay, then I probably would be the first in line to offer that amendment. If that has not gone, and I'm looking at maybe at something in the extreme of 250 feet from water, period, cutting and spraying, something of that magnitude. Okay, if we can get to something there, maybe that's going to be something. Ooh, that's not bad. We've done pretty good work. Maybe not. We haven't gone all the way, but short of coming up with something that is going to make that environment a safer place for man and beast. If we can't come up with something that's going to make it a safer thing, then I suspect that this bill, I think I'd be supporting the bill as it is. So that's my comment. That's where I'd like to go. And I'd be prepared to, depending on what we come up with this 1 week, I'd be prepared to vote on those results. Thank you.
Representative Pluker.
Thank you, Representative McCray. I was taking the conversation in a different direction. Does somebody want to speak directly to what Representative McCray was just talking about, or?
Not at the moment. Go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted, we were looking for some data, and this is not direct data about glyphosate, but just that in a 2017 survey put out by Maine Health Data Organization in partnership with the Maine Cancer Foundation, Aroostook County had the highest death rate from cancer in the state, approximately 6 times more than Cumberland, and that's for inpatients. For outpatients, it was the second highest, and which was still about 3 times higher than what Cumberland County had. So just, is there a lot of cancer up in Aroostook County? Yes, there is. We know that. Do I know where it comes from? No, I don't. And then I also just wanted to throw out to Pam. Pam and her family and I have been members of the same church, I think, for almost a decade now. She's her family's super involved with the church, as is mine, and I think she's great, and her family is great. But at the same time, Pam, could I ask you some questions that I think I already know the answers to?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Does glyphosate have a big impact on bacteria and how bacteria synthesizes amino acids and that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a growing area of a lot of interesting research. And some bacteria eat glyphosate for breakfast. Some bacteria will die with exposure to glyphosate. The question will be trying to figure out what bacteria are actually in the human gut or in the guts of animals in the environment, and how those ratios could be affected.
Thank you.
That's what we don't know. And like when you eat a lot of beans, you've changed the composition of bacteria in your gut. And that's the moving target of trying to understand how the microbiome is controlled by a chemical exposure like this.
Yes, thank you. So if your probiotics in your gut are messed up, we know the probiotics in your gut are changed by glyphosate, as they are by beans, but maybe in a different way by glyphosate. There could be connections between the way your gut bacteria is happening and a link between that and cancer, for instance.
Yep. But we also know that the biggest source of glyphosate is the diet. So when you are thinking about changing an exposure to a person, the diet would be the best place to try to change that exposure. Because we know that it's not really well transferred in water. And we know that a lot of people there's not even enough in the dust in the Midwest to make airborne exposure significant. But next question.
No, that was it. Just drawing the connection between glyphosate, gut bacteria, and then potential health effects from having messed up gut bacteria.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
That's it, Bill? That's all you got for me?
That's all. I'm easy.
Representative O'Neill, and then Representative Osher.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'll be really quick. So something I want to make note of and flag to come back to is, and I want to use the right title, Dr. Breyer. I had mentioned the word emotion in relation to this conversation. I just want to throw out there to the committee that I'd hope we can make an agreement going forward to not use that word or make characterizations like that going forward, because I don't think I don't feel it's helpful to bring up in public hearings or make any kind of reference or characterization or feedback like that. So that's my request going forward, is if we can refrain from using that. And nothing against you, Dr. Breyer. This is more of a like a general committee conversation on these issues. I just would hope that we can not use that word going forward, please.
Can I comment on that? Maybe.
Sure.
I'd rather not, please. It really doesn't have to do with you, Dr. Breyer. I'm just trying to set a ground rule going forward, and I don't want to derail the conversation. I'm just making a request that we please don't use that word. But I think I don't want to derail the conversation, go anywhere else. And again, no offense taken. I just want to please move forward without using that word.
Representative Schofield.
Thank you, Senator Dill. The word emotion is in the dictionary. It applies to every living human being that I'm aware of. I'm no expert on psychology or emotions, but emotions and facts are indeed part of our makeup. And to ban a word based on the feelings of an individual in a committee, I think, is a shortfall. And unless we as a committee agree that a certain word or certain thought or a certain way of presenting ourselves is to be banned, I think that's a disservice to the committee and the people we serve. So I am not quite exactly sure where Representative O'Neill is coming from with this, but I have no problem with the word emotion and its use as part of our lexicon. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm just going to jump in, please. Thank you, Representative Schofield. I would love to have this conversation off mic. Definitely here to have it. I'd just like if we could stick to the subject matter. I'm thinking it more as a role that each of us play as chairs, kind of like a referee, and throwing the flag and saying, hey, can we please come back to this later and stick to the subject matter. And I would love to circle back and have that conversation.
I would agree with you, Representative O'Neill, that we need to stick to the subject matter. And that's where we're going to go. Representative Burnett.
Thank you very much, Senator. Maybe I'm not able now to stick to the subject matter. I think that it is sticking to the subject matter. It was Representative O'Neill who brought it up. So is it all right for us to react to that as a freedom of speech kind of thing?
I guess I will this will be the last one if we can, please, and we'll go from here.
Ooh, I feel a very heavy weight to say this correctly. Representative O'Neill, if we don't want to use that word, what word can we use to describe when the argument is not necessarily fact-based, but based on feelings of what might happen coming up? There's nothing wrong with that. I'm going to say that there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's just that we have to categorize our arguments. And that's all I would be attempting to do here. And that there's, for me, a person, anyone who knows me in my heart, understands that there's nothing wrong with speaking of emotion. I think a lot of what we do here speaks to our understanding of people, how much we care about people. That speaks of emotion to me. There's nothing wrong with caring about people and following through on legislation that we believe helps people. That could be connected to emotion. But anyway, I'm sure I'm leaving out what I really want to say, and I'll think of it after I turn off the mic. But I just want you to understand, I'm not trying to cut off anything. That's the last thing I would want to do, is to cut off any kind of dialogue here, whether it be by the use of one word or 2 words or 3 words. I just think that that's a real bad way to go, as long as we can advance our discussion. And I would like to advance a discussion too. So if you could come up with a word that is better to describe what we're talking about here, I am thrilled to use it.
Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My request is that I'm trying to make a call in the moment. It sounds like we should probably sit down and have an off mic conversation with one another. And my request is simply that from my perspective, using the word emotion involves a characterization of somebody else and where they're coming from. And I'd like to get to a place where we're avoiding making characterizations of one another's, where they're coming from on mic. That would be my preference and something that I would like to have a conversation about off mic. So not much more to say than that, but I would love to have this conversation off mic to set some ground rules with one another about what feels good.
Just to remind everybody, we have 6 more work sessions ahead of us. We've been at this one for 2.5 hours. So Representative Osher, I think you had your hand up.
Right. Yeah, I will wrap this up. Thank you very much for recognizing me. Thank you, Dr. Breyer, for your presentation. And the focus I want to be on here is on science. And I really appreciated the presentation. However, you gave a listing, a table that looked at all the different things that were tested. And as you described it more, it became clear that the second and third columns were whether or not that had been tested, not whether or not it had been found to be innocuous or safe or not having negative impacts to the ecosystem or the environment. And since it's by design, the pesticide, this particular pesticide, its goal is to wipe out particular species. So looking at the science, we know that the way in which science can be presented can then be used as a way to influence other people's take-home message. So I appreciate that you gave us some science. However, the fact that there's an incidence did not change for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma with an increase in spraying of this pesticide does not negate that there have been huge settlements based on negative impacts because of the huge spraying of this pesticide, or the extensive spraying that has increased over time. And then as it has increased, people have identified ways in which that has had a negative impact on humans and other living things. So I'm not talking, so I'm talking with specifically about what has been presented that although as a state toxicologist, I really value the work that you were doing in our state, but I didn't see presentations about work and data from our state. And as others have mentioned, there have been these big settlements, but we haven't actually been able to see what it was that convinced a judge and jury that those settlements were should be presented. As legislators, our job is to try to do the best by our state and by the people who are both working in our state to try to make a business, in this case, the foresters, and the people who sell pesticides, I guess, are probably other people who work in our state. But we also want to make sure that we're protecting our citizens. And this is a concern. It's a concern of our citizens. That's why it's been brought to us. And I haven't seen data that presented why this is not an impact to our ecosystems or our citizens. So I am supportive of this, and I think I'm ready to take a vote on it.
Representative McCray.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I don't want to cut anybody off. I will be making a motion to table perhaps the 4th of May or later, depending on what the chairs decide as far as scheduling. And I would ask that the department and industry come up with setback information that is as extended as they can. And we will take our vote after we have that table or that information, and sort of let the chips fall where they may. But I think it is time that we move on today. And when it's appropriate, I will be making a motion to table. So I will leave that up to you, Mr. Chair.
I think we're probably at that point right now. So if you want to make that motion, go for it.
I move that LD 125 be tabled until May 4th or later, depending on the chair's decision.
Is there a second? It's been seconded by Representative O'Neill. All in favor, just raise your hand. Opposed? 2. Okay, it passes. We'll table it until next week.
Thank you very much.
Yep. And we'll figure out, Representative O'Neill, which day, either Tuesday or Thursday. It may be that is Representative Cormier, Director Cormier still on here? If you could unmute yourself, Patty.
I am.
Hi there. Do you think that which will be better, Tuesday or Thursday? Probably the more time, the better to come up with something, or?
I suspect Thursday would be better.
Yeah, okay. Then why don't we ask Karen to put it on the agenda for Thursday, and we'll try to wrap it up then. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. This has been tabled, so we'll close the work session on LD 125, move on to LD 657, an act to clarify the law enforcement powers of the Bureau of Parks and Lands. Karen.
Yeah, so this was tabled. It needs to be taken off the table.
Can I have a motion to take this off the table, please? Moved by Representative Landry, seconded by Representative Hall. All in favor? It's off the table.
So I do see Director Cutco, Director of Bureau of Parks and Lands in the attendees. If it's okay with the chairs, we probably should let him in. But how we left it last time was I, on behalf of Representative Schofield, was trying to draft an amendment that would be agreeable to the sponsor of the bill, Representative Schofield, and the Bureau of Parks and Lands. So the last I heard is that the Bureau wanted to contact their assistant AG and get some guidance about, the law enforcement training required to detain someone, and get some further clarity around the process, requesting background checks, etc. So, I'm not sure where we are exactly with the amendment, but one of the things that the draft amendment did was, rather than just referring to park rangers, it would talk about authorizing appointed state park staff with these law enforcement powers. And then the amendment also provided that state park staff hired prior to the effective date of the act may decline appointment as state park staff with law enforcement powers. And then it also, the last version of the amendment that I saw, struck the requirement for pre-service law enforcement training and firearms training for these state park staff with law enforcement powers. So anyway, Director Cutco is here to talk about what their Assistant Attorney General is, is advising them to do in terms of arresting and detaining, and he can certainly speak to that.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions for Karen?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I had a question.
Yes, go ahead, Representative Fluker.
Karen, where would I find the most latest version of the amendment we're looking at?
Well, I have to, I basically have to screen share it because,
Okay.
you know, I didn't, it was kind of going back and forth, and I guess I could just screen share it if you like, but I didn't feel like I'd heard from Representative Schofield that he was good with it and the Bureau was good with it, but I
Nope.
can share with you the latest draft that I got from the Bureau. I think we're pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't need to do it right now. We can hear from
Okay.
other. Thank you.
Representative Schofield.
Yes, thank you, Senator Dill, and thank you, Karen. She expressed it pretty well. I haven't responded. I guess the last time the ball was in Director Cutco's court. He was going to talk with the Assistant AG, and the results of that conversation I have not heard yet. So I'm anxious to hear what the Director Cutco might have to offer regarding his conversations with the Attorney General's office. So I guess I would request that he present that. Thank you.
Yes, good morning, Representative Schofield and members of the committee. I'm Andy Cutco, the Director of the Bureau of Parks and Lands. And at the last work session, there was a fair amount of discussion around the specific language, detain and arrest. And my inquiry to the Attorney General's office was, what is the level of law enforcement training that's required to both detain and arrest? And I spoke with the gentleman in the Attorney General's office, who is the Director of Investigations and also had served as the chair of the board of the Maine Criminal Justice Academy. And I had responded, I thought to you, Representative Schofield, with some amendments based on that discussion several days ago. I think Karen did receive that at least. But to cut to the chase, essentially what the Attorney General's office, the guidance they provided me was that to detain and arrest does require formal law enforcement training, a sworn officer who has training in being armed in the full 18-week academy. And so what my recommendation was based on at least the department's reservations about requiring that full arming and enforcement training on behalf of the staff. My recommendation was to eliminate the detain and arrest language from, I believe it's section 2 of the bill. Now, just to be clear, I think there was some discussion last time around what it means to detain, and can a park ranger simply inquire about requesting an individual to come over and speak with them quietly. And certainly they can make that request, but the individual can refuse to do that. If the individual refuses to do that once a sworn law enforcement officer comes in, that's a Class E misdemeanor. However, the individual can refuse to be detained from a park ranger if the park ranger doesn't have that full law enforcement training. Does that all make sense?
Senator Dill?
Yes. I was waiting for you to respond, Representative Schofield.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I understand that. Yes, and if that's what you have from the Attorney General's office, I guess I can't particularly argue with that. Although I got to say, in my career, I detained people on numerous occasions, and the perception was that I had that authority. Of course, I was sworn too. I was also a sworn officer, and those things occurred back in those days. And I'm not going to get into the details of what it is to become a sworn officer today, but there was an exclusion for park rangers and forest rangers to not have to attend the full 18 weeks. And I am not sure that that's being considered, but that's okay. I do think that, and if I understand you, Director Cutco, that the issuance of a summons is not a question that the Attorney General had. Could I ask you that?
That's correct. As I think we talked about at the work session, I do currently have the authority to designate individuals to issue a summons. And it's not something that previous directors have used, at least in the last 7 to 10 years. It is an ability that I have chosen to use on limited occasion, but it's evident based on the testimony that was provided by some staff that there is a lack of clarity around that question. This discussion with the legislature has already prompted active discussion among our staff to address and clarify some of those issues. So I think there is some guidance that will emerge from this discussion, regardless of which direction the committee takes, that will assist us moving forward. One of the other pieces there that we looked into, based on some of the comments at the last work session, was getting the sheriff's reports of incidents from both Popham and Reed State Park and comparing them to the incident reports that our own staff have generated. And so we've done that, and we've already come up with some guidance for staff on greater consistency and clarity in issuing incident reports. So I do think that there are some positive steps, again, that have already come out of this discussion, and others that we will continue on with over the upcoming year, regardless of what direction the committee takes with this bill.
Thank you, Director Cuddick. I think that's important, and I'm pleased, very pleased to hear that staff and you are having those discussions, because, as you know, I feel it's very important, and I think it's one of the things I think we should consider as we move this forward is the grandfathering that you mentioned earlier. In other words, if a current park manager, park ranger, whatever, is not interested in being part of this program, they need not be. Because over the last decade or so, I believe there's been some, when people have been hired, there hasn't been an emphasis on the fact that they needed to enforce park rules and regulations like it may have been years ago. So based on the fact that those folks may feel uncomfortable doing it because they said, I wasn't hired to do this job, that's understandable. They may not have been. But I do think, Director Cutco, that going forward, if the park manager at Polka Moonshine State Park opts out, for him to go to camp, to Park Way Wobegon, he may not be able to do that. I mean, in the current position, which when I mean current position, I mean current position and location. If you decide you need to transfer somewhere else or be considered for transfer somewhere else, then you would have to give up that option. And I believe that should be done. Otherwise, people will just fill out their entire career and not say, hey, I wasn't hired for this. The second thing I think that we should do is that all new hires should have the expectation that this is part of their job and not have it as an option. It's an expectation. And the third thing is and you just mentioned it, just alluded to it, to the reporting. I believe that you're not getting accurate reporting. And I think to facilitate that, it might be good for the Bureau or the director of the Bureau or the Bureau to report to this committee on an annual basis the amount of enforcement actions that were taken, the number of people who were given the designation to issue summonses and their locations, and give us a general report, more of an adequate or detailed report than has been forthcoming in the last couple of decades or decade or so. Would those be things that you would be amenable to?
I would have to take them one at a time. I think so. I guess I'd have to think about each of those. I mean, certainly to the extent that the last piece of generating accurate incident reports from our staff and confirming them with local law enforcement, again, that's a step that we've already taken, and I think that makes sense. The question about moving staff around I'd want to confer with my staff about what the implications of that might be.
Director Cutco, and I'll use some specifics. I won't make up park names. If you were working at Moose Point State Park, for instance, which I'm not diminishing the role of Moose Point State Park, but it's a different environment than the Allagash Wilderness Waterway or Sebago Lake State Park. If the park manager at Moose Point State Park decided they would like to transfer and be promoted to Sebago Lake State Park, but they didn't want to be included in any enforcement process, I think that should not be allowed to occur. If you opt out at the place you're at now, that's fine, because you were hired with without the expectation of that being part of your job duties. If you go to a park where it is required, you should have to step up or not be allowed to transfer. I mean, I'm putting it very simply. Your thoughts?
Well, thank you. I think that that's a helpful clarification of what you're suggesting. And I do want to speak to the last work session. The three areas that we talked about were the Allagash Waterway, Rang Pond State Park, and Sebago Lake State Park. And I do want to clarify that it was not my intent to isolate those places necessarily because of data that we're looking at. It was principally because the individuals that provided testimony were representing those places. I do think that in terms of the internal conversations we've had over the last few weeks, what this discussion has prompted us to is not only to listen to the people who work for the Bureau, which their perspectives are hugely important, but to also look at the data as to where the problem spots are, both data from ourselves and data from local law enforcement, and make those decisions in a very informed manner. That I listened to the discussion on glyphosate, and obviously our decision should be based on data and facts, and find out where they lead.
Thank you, Thank you, Director Cutco. I think that makes sense. I just know that there is a need for this in the field, and I know that the Bureau, for whatever reasons, have been reluctant over the last decade or more to accommodate this. These people are out there 24/7. They live over the store. They are responsible for the actions of what goes on in the facilities that they manage and operate and responsible for. And part of their duties, and I'm sure you've seen them in their task statements, is to enforce. Enforcement is in there, and rightfully so. You have done some decent training over the last couple of years, and I anticipate that will continue and that it will be improved as time goes on based on the needs in the field. So I'm pleased to hear that, if nothing else, and I believe we can work something through here, the fact that you are now doing training, the fact that you have taken a more proactive approach with the enforcement issue is pleasing to me, and I appreciate that. And I guess I like the idea but I don't want to just leave it up to whatever current Bureau director is in play. I think it should be mandated that the Bureau do this, that the Bureau director be responsible for this, and not as a couple of your predecessors a time or two ago decided not to do it anymore. I think that you need to do it, and it needs to be more or less cast in stone, which is why the legislation is appropriate, as a requirement of your office to make this happen, to move it forward on a continuing basis. So that's where I'm at, and I hope that we can come to some accord on this.
Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Schofield, for going through this. And I want to preface what I'm saying with the fact that I very clearly respect your long career that you had as a park employee, and also the folks that took the time to come speak with us, not just this year, but in previous years as well. And I want to thank Director Cutco for going through this process and involving them as stakeholders. At this point, what I am struggling with is that we haven't seen a clear and methodical process that we've gone through, and that's no denigration of the process that you've gone through, Director Cutco, because I do appreciate you engaging stakeholders. But what I would like to have seen is some kind of process where we've reviewed all the parks, gone through incident reports, and methodically said, you know, we have a real need here, here, and here, and we can show you that, and not seeing that process, because we haven't had that process, it makes it hard for me to feel like I can support this bill now, and to explain why. It's because I view law enforcement power as a serious power, whether you're able to detain or arrest or issue a citation, that can have, it has a big impact on people's lives if they get cited for something, can't pay. There's an impact there, and there's a culture shift, and I really want to be thoughtful when we're doing this and go through a methodical process. So where I am is I would want to vote ought not to pass without that process having been gone through. If folks do want to look at this further, I'm open to asking the department to go through a methodical process where they go through those kinds of things I was talking about, look at the incident reports to see if they're complete and accurate, review the connections that each park has with local law enforcement, who's saying that they need this, and just really make a methodical report back to the committee so that if we're making a decision either way on this, it's really based on a methodical thought process, and we have everything in front of us.
Representative Pluker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also sit on the Criminal Justice Committee on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And so we have a lot of conversation around law enforcement powers, law enforcement duties, and training and that sort of thing. And, repeatedly on that committee, what we hear is that the legislature shouldn't get involved when it comes to law enforcement. The law enforcement and the executive branch should be making their own choices and around how they carry out their duties, whether it comes to intelligence gathering and how they conduct warrants and training at the Maine Criminal Justice Academy. So I feel like that this bill is kind of moving the opposite direction, that it's taking some of the independent decision making away from the director and putting it in the hands of the legislature in terms of writing a law. And so I say that not being exactly clear what the amended version of the bill that we're looking at is, but I am opposed to mandating any action by the Bureau Director. My impression is that the Bureau Director currently has the power to create law enforcement officers and to get them trained. And I'm not looking to force their hand one way or the other. Thank you.
Are there other questions, comments?
Yeah.
Representative Schofield.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Dill. Yeah, maybe to help answer Representative Fluka's concerns, you are right in that since the 1930s, the Park Service has had the ability to do all of these things, to actually arrest, detain, summons, the whole bit. Historically and traditionally, that power has not been actively used. There have been instances over the years where certain situations have arose where park staff, park rangers, I'll call them, have issued summonses. But it's usually one of the last things they do. Bureau policy, in its correct bureau policy, is that we are to educate, inform, and to get voluntary compliance. That is predominantly what is used in each and every case. There are instances, however, when those tools aren't adequate and further action needs to be happening. So for years that worked. The need for more training for law enforcement folks was initiated sometime back in the 1980s, as I recall, and many of us who were employed then went through that additional training. And even after that, the policy didn't change much. The attitude of the people in the field didn't change. And we conducted our business, but we had the authority to continue to work that we did. The Bureau still has a lot of say over how people conduct themselves, and the culture and the policies within the Bureau are still accomplished through the leadership of the director. The director sets the tone, and every director has his own spin on things, but the director sets his tone. So for the last decade or more, the Bureau directors felt reluctant to change and to engage in this because there was a policy by a previous director not to do it anymore. And in my conversations with the two last, the current one and his predecessor, they told me both that they felt that they couldn't change that policy. And I said, well, we can help you with that. We can help you change the policy by making it so that you are clearly in charge, that you clearly have the ability and the authority to designate those who you deem necessary to carry out the function that you deem necessary, without putting specific requests on, you're going to do it for this individual or this park or whatever. It's still clearly left with the Bureau director to make that determination. And the Bureau director is still going to be able to do that. And this law, this bill doesn't change that a bit. So I guess that's how I feel. And I'm ready. I guess, unless anybody has any questions of me, that's where we're at. Thank you.
Karen, could you share with us what the most recent amendment says? Is that possible, or?
Sure. And just to clarify, when the bill was tabled, there was a motion on the floor, ought to pass as amended, that was made by Representative Bernard and seconded by Representative Underwood. And it's my understanding that, that motion was basically deferring to Representative Schofield and the Bureau to come up with an agreement based on sort of those three things that I talked about earlier. But yes, I do have, I can share my screen. Make sure I have the right.
Karen or Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'm on my phone. Would it be possible for Karen to email that?
Sure. I assume Karen can email that.
Yes. If I could multitask, I would. So what I'm going to do is, it's an email from Director Cutco. I'm just going to forward it to Rep. Pluker right now. Okay. Oh yeah. So so this is the amendment, and so if you see any underline or strike through, that's in the original bill. The red is so this is what I'll just start off. So it amends the bill in section 1 as follows. So you see in subsection 2 there, it refers to subsection 2A, which would give state park staff with law enforcement powers. And it strikes all that language about an employee or an agent of the Bureau, authorizing them to detain or arrest, etc. Because as Director Cutco had pointed out, they already have that authority in subsection 1 under powers of law enforcement officers. So it cleans up that language. And then anything that you see highlighted gray was kind of my marked up version of the original bill. So this is where, rather than referring to park rangers, we refer to state park staff, because there are park managers and superintendents, etc. So it's using a more general term. So that makes that change. And then again, in section 2 of the bill, changes park ranger to state park staff person. And then, I'm sorry, that's in section 3. In section 4, same thing. And then looks like what the Bureau did is it clarified that training of state park staff with law enforcement powers. This is modeled after the forest ranger statute, but the amendment that you all discussed the last work session is to delete the pre-service law enforcement training requirement. So that was a second piece. And then what the Bureau added in our discussions was that the in-service law enforcement training that's specifically approved by the board, prescribed for state park staff with law enforcement powers, that training would not, with the exception of firearms training, that would not be a required part of their in-service law enforcement training, firearms training. And paragraph D goes along with that. And then section 5 is about the application, which was kind of the third piece of the discussion at the last work session, that any state park staff hired prior to the effective date of this act may decline appointment, although I might reword that more elegantly to say something like the director of the Bureau of Parks and Lands within the department may not appoint any person currently employed by the Bureau as a state park staff person with law enforcement powers without that person's voluntary consent, would be my suggested change to that. But anyway, that's the latest draft that I saw, but I don't know if there are additional changes.
And where does this stand from the standpoint? Is this been agreed upon by both the Director Cutco and Representative Schofield that has seen this? Or
well, my understanding is I believe that the Bureau is comfortable with that version of it. I'm not sure where Representative Schofield stands, which is why I did not post it anywhere, because I wasn't sure. I think we wanted to hear about their conversations with the Attorney General's office first.
right. Okay. In order first was actually Representative Fluker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Karen, under section 4.8E, I think that's subparagraph B, or it refers to in-service law enforcement training that's specifically approved by the board. Is that the board of the Maine Criminal Justice Academy?
Yes.
So if they wanted to have it, if they wanted to include firearms training as part of their training, then that would be allowed.
Well, it says with the exception of firearms training.
Oh, sorry, I'm missing something.
So the law would preclude that, because it says that that's not a requirement.
Where does it say with the exception?
Oh, yeah, I forget. You're colorblind. So, and it's not paginated. So it's on the bottom. I'm assuming it's paragraph B.
Paragraph B.
So section 4 of the bill amendment,
Yeah.
8E,
Uh-huh.
and the new, well, it's paragraph B. It was paragraph C. It's now paragraph B.
Uh-huh.
In-service law enforcement training that is specifically approved by the board
Yes.
as prescribed, with the exception of firearms training.
Oh, sorry. That's, yeah, I don't see it at all. Great. Okay. So they get it except for the, okay, got it. Thank you.
Representative Schofield, you had your hand up next, but did you want to comment on?
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Senator Dill. Yeah, I'm fine with this and I believe the Bureau Director is as well. And I think we have a good understanding of what's going to happen. I think he and I do. I can't speak for him, but I think I have a pretty good understanding, and I appreciate all the work that he has done, and he's moved this ball way down the court from where it was. And I certainly appreciate that. And I think that if I'm set with this, if he is, so I'll be listening for his response.
Okay, I will ask him that before I go over to Representative O'Neill. Director Cutco, are you okay with the amendment that was just presented here?
I will just be deferential to the committee on this one. I think the department would be comfortable with the amendments as described. As I mentioned earlier in the work session, we've already put into place a number of the pieces that have been discussed. So if the committee felt like they wanted to go in a different direction, I will defer to the committee on that as well. But yes, we are okay with the amendments.
Thank you. Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So where I am is I'm still in a place where I can't support this. And the reason why is because my philosophy on this is that we're not in a place where we need more policing. I don't think that's the way our society should be headed. And I haven't worked in the Allagash, but I've heard differing opinions from folks. Staff are divided on this issue. Not everyone wants staff to be made law enforcement officers. We already have de-escalation training, so I just want to emphasize that that's already going on. For that reason, I will be voting ought not to pass. And I have offered to folks if it would be preferable to go through a review process. But what I will be talking about on this issue, and I feel very strongly about it, is that this is an immense power to give people, even if you remove the detain and arrest portion, and it needs to be made methodically. We're having a huge conversation in our country right now about policing and rethinking our relationship to law enforcement. It's not something that I would not take this kind of vote lightly, and I would invite committee members to go through a methodical process before making this move. And I will speak to that for sure to the body.
Representative Hall.
Thank you, Senator Dill. Do we have a motion on the floor?
We do.
Okay.
It's
Could
not to
someone,
pass as amended, but we'll have to ask Representative Bernard in a minute if she's okay with the amendment that Karen just put up there. She
Okay,
kind
thank
of
you.
alluded to them to work on it. Are
Okay.
you set?
I am.
Okay. Representative Bernard, are you okay with the amendment that was just presented? You had made the motion last time, and I think you left it, as Karen said, kind of up to Director Cutco and Representative Schofield and others to flesh out the amendment, and it was just presented. So you're okay with the amendment that was just presented for your motion?
And so I was just pulled away for a moment and missed some of it. I just want to make sure, is Representative Schofield fine with the amendment?
Yes, and Director Cutco is too, he said.
Then I am as well.
Okay. And Representative Underwood, are you still here? You're okay as a second? I guess he's not there. So it's been. Representative O'Neill, do you have your hand up again?
Oh, no, that was a legacy hand.
Sorry, I was paying attention on the other side of the board, so. Okay, and go ahead. I guess we can call the roll. Karen.
Cheryl will.
Cheryl will.
But
I'm looking at Karen, but Cheryl, you can, yes.
Who was the seconded on that?
Representative Underwood.
Also, okay. LD 657 ought to pass as amended. Senator James Dill.
Yes.
Senator James Dill, yes. Senator Russell Black.
Yes.
Senator Russell Black, yes. Senator Chloe Maxman.
No.
Senator Chloe Maxman, no. Representative Maggie O'Neill.
No.
Representative Maggie O'Neill, no. Representative Randall Hall.
Yes.
Representative Randall Hall, yes. Representative Thomas Schofield.
Yes.
Representative Thomas Schofield, yes. Representative Lori Osher.
No.
Representative Lori Osher, no. Representative Joseph Underwood. Absent. Representative Scott Landry.
Yes.
Representative Scott Landry, yes. Representative Bill Pluker.
No.
Representative Bill Pluker, no. Representative Jeffrey Gifford.
Yes.
Representative Jeffrey Gifford, yes. Representative David McCray.
Yes.
Representative David McCray, yes. Representative Susan Bernard.
Yes.
Representative Susan Bernard, yes. 8 yes, 4 no, and 1 absent.
On LD 657, an act to clarify law enforcement powers of the Bureau of Parks and Lands ought to pass as amended 841.
And yeah.
And the yes. Karen.
4, are they all in agreement? I heard Representative O'Neill that her report will be ought not to pass, but I want to make sure that the other 3 are on board with that.
I see yes from Representative Pluker.
Okay.
Senator Maxman, Representative Osh is saying yes, and yes, they are all in agreement ought not to pass.
Okay. Thank you.
We have 4 bills left, but I think a lot of these are quick carryovers. It's 12:15. Is that right, Karen, as we look at these things? Aren't they?
Yes, and I also have some language and
review,
fiscal note review.
Right. So I'm thinking if no one is opposed, that we just go ahead and do these last few, and then we'll be done for the day rather than breaking and coming back for a very short time. Everybody in agreement with that? I see yeses and nodding heads. So, okay, we'll close the work session on LD 657, open up the work session on LD 174, and act to implement the recommendations of the Ending Hunger by 2030 Advisory Group. And that is Representative Pluker's bill.
Yeah, so on this one, seems like way back, it's legislative sessions, time warps. But this was months ago, Representative Pluker had asked the committee to carry this bill over. So the summary, basically the title tells you what it's trying to do. And I believe Representative Pluker has been working with the department on coming up with language for the bill. So I think he is of the mind, and many of us are of the mind, that it would be, I think, more helpful if we had language that the public could, provide testimony on, so give them more time, to come back with some suggested language or a more fleshed out concept, and then, have a hearing in the second regular session, and work session, et cetera. But at the time, I think the committee was ready to vote to carry it over, but then we were told by leadership that we couldn't do it yet. And so I think we're getting to the point where we can do that because we're supposed to vote all our bills by next Friday. So.
Representative Pluker, is that where you are on this one?
Or was the concise, we're going to try to carry it over?
Yes, 174.
Yeah. The department is working on this. I don't know if Craig Lapine is on our list there. He could give us an update of the work that they're doing. But basically, this is going to be a vehicle to, if there does turn out to be statute work that needs to be done.
Did you get it?
No, I can't hear him.
But we can hear you, Andy. If there is statute work that needs to be done coming out of that advisory group, then this will be a vehicle for that we can have the conversation around. So if we're all right with it, I would move to carry over.
Okay, it's been moved to carry over. Is there a second? It's been seconded by Senator Maxman, sorry. Any discussion?
I do see Craig Lapine is, if anyone has any questions for him.
Does anybody have
From the
any
department.
From the department? Since it's a carryover, we may as well just go ahead and vote. Okay, Cheryl, would you please call the roll?
LD 174, carryover. Senator James Dill.
Yes.
Senator James Dill, yes. Senator Russell Black.
Yes.
Senator Russell Black, yes. Senator Chloe Maxman.
Yes.
Senator Chloe Maxman, yes. Representative Maggie O'Neill.
Yes.
Representative Maggie O'Neill, yes. Representative Randall Hall. Representative Randall Hall.
He's back. I don't know if he can unmute himself. I don't know if he can hear us. He said earlier he couldn't hear us. Representative Hall, can you hear us? There you go.
Can chat, right?
No.
Hello? Hello? Can you hear us? No? I'll go back to him if that's all right.
Yep.
Representative Thomas Schofield.
Yes.
Representative Thomas Schofield, yes. Representative Lori Osher.
Yes.
Representative Lori Osher, yes. Representative Joseph Underwood. I'll go back to Representative Underwood.
Representative Underwood, can you hear us? Evidently not. Interesting.
Representative Scott Landry.
Yes.
Representative Scott Landry, yes. Representative Bill Pluker.
Yes.
Representative Bill Pluker, yes. Representative Jeffrey Gifford.
Yes.
Representative Jeffrey Gifford, yes. Representative David McCray.
Yes.
Representative David McCray, yes. Representative Susan Bernard.
Yes.
Representative Susan Bernard, yes. Representative Randall Hall. Representative Joseph Underwood.
Representative Underwood, you just unmuted yourself. Can you hear us? No. Okay.
Maybe someone could communicate with him through the chat or text him or something.
Yeah, go ahead. Maybe if they log out and log back in, or did you have some other suggestions here?
Hi, Randy. Can you log out and log back in?
Yeah, maybe that's what they both need to do. It looks like Representative Underwood has done that, so.
Yep. Guess we can find out if that works.
Okay, did we want to move on and? Oh.
Yep. Yep.
Representative Hall is going to log off and log back on.
Okay.
Representative Underwood, can you hear us now? Doesn't look like he can hear us, even though I guess he logged out and logged back in. He's going to try his earphones now.
Good idea.
Can you hear us now, Representative Underwood?
Oh, good.
He's nodding yes.
Representative Underwood, we had a carryover vote on LD 174. Would you like to carry over?
What does carryover vote? What does that exactly entail?
It just means that we'll take it up again in the second half of the session.
Thank you. Okay. Yes.
Okay.
And actually, the one that we just voted, 657.
Yep.
He was absent. Can we be a good time to get his vote?
Right, while we're waiting for Representative Hall.
Especially since he seconded the motion.
Representative Underwood,
Yes.
on LD 657, ought to pass as amended. You seconded that motion back a while ago. Would you like to vote yes or no on that vote?
I'll vote yes.
Okay, thank you very, very much.
All right.
I'm back on.
All right. We can't see you.
Oh, boy.
Up in the corner, you can, up in the corner.
No, I want to change
There
it.
he is.
Oh, there he
yes.
is. You're
Yeah.
on here twice. I was looking at you down in the bottom. We can see you
Oh,
in here.
yeah. Ah, all right.
So this is a vote to carry over, Representative Hall. On
I'm
174.
assuming, yes.
Yes, okay.
Thank
So
you.
on LD 174, enact to implement the recommendations of the Ending Hunger by 2030 Advisory Group. It has been voted to carry over. I will close the work session on 174. We'll open up the work session on 219, an act to enhance the agricultural market loan fund by establishing a variable interest rate for loans and to allow participants in the main fund for future program to borrow at that rate. Yeah, I'm
So-
speeding up a little bit, so.
This is not a concept draft, but we haven't had a public hearing, but again, way at the beginning of the session, I believe the department requested that the committee carry this over. And I believe Nancy McBrady is in the attendees. I don't know the details of the reasoning why they wanted it carried over. It's been so long. But maybe she can fill us in if you know, the committee wants to hear.
Okay, I see Nancy McBrady down in the corner. Nancy, can you unmute yourself? And there we go. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Nancy McBrady, Director of the Bureau of Agriculture. I'll try and speak as fast as you, Senator Dill, if that will help move on. Yes, this was a bill that we asked to have carried over. It is something we are interested in pursuing. However, at this point in time, we're conducting internal due diligence around the overarching agricultural marketing loan fund and its sustainability and its structure. And if we would like there to be a more fulsome package of changes to that program, we'd like to come back next session and just do it all in one go. So that's why we've requested to move it over.
All right. Very good. Thank you. Can I have a motion to carry this on over?
So move.
Been moved by Representative Pluker, seconded by Representative Hall. Okay. Go ahead, Cheryl. Please call the roll. There's no other discussion.
Yeah, I can't write as fast as you talk. Here we go. All right. Senator James Dill.
Yes.
Senator James Dill, yes. Senator Russell Black.
Yes.
Senator Russell Black, yes. Senator Chloe Maxman.
Yes.
Senator Chloe Maxman, yes. Representative Maggie O'Neill.
Yes.
Representative Maggie O'Neill, yes. Representative Randall Hall.
Yes.
Representative Randall Hall, yes. Representative Thomas Schofield.
Yes.
Representative Thomas Schofield, yes. Representative Lori Osher.
Yes.
Representative Lori Osher, yes. Representative Joseph Underwood.
Yes.
Representative Joseph Underwood. Yes.
Yes.
I'm missing. Oh, there you are. Thank you, sir. Representative Scott Landry.
Yes.
Representative Scott Landry, yes. Representative William Pluker.
Yes.
Representative William Pluker, yes. Representative Jeffrey Gifford.
Yes.
Representative Jeffrey Gifford, yes. Representative David McCray.
Yes.
Representative David McCray, yes. Representative Susan Bernard.
Yes.
Representative Susan Bernard, yes. Unanimous carryover 219.
Okay, on LD 219, it will be carried over to the second half of the session. I will close the work session on 219 and open up the work session on LD 856, an act to balance renewable energy development with natural and working lands conservation. Karen.
So this is another concept draft, and the sponsor of the bill, Representative Barry, had asked, at least spoke with the House Chair and maybe others about carrying this over. That's all I have.
That's all you have. Okay, Representative O'Neill, did you say you talked to Representative Barry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I spoke with him yesterday and he confirmed that he would still like it to be carried over, please.
All right. I don't have a problem with doing that, but just out of curiosity, Karen, are we up to 10, 12, 15 now, or?
We are probably at, this would be the 5th one.
Okay, well, we're in good shape. We can go 2 or 3 more, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So does somebody want to make a motion to carry this over? Representative Landry, seconded by Representative Hall. Please call the roll if there's no further discussion. Cheryl?
LD 856, carryover, Senator James Dill.
Yes.
Senator James Dill, yes. Senator Russell Black.
Yes.
Senator Russell Black, yes. Senator Chloe Maxman.
Yes.
Senator Chloe Maxman, yes. Representative Maggie O'Neill.
Yes.
Representative Maggie O'Neill, yes. Representative Randall Hall.
Yes.
Representative Randall Hall, yes. Representative Thomas Schofield.
Yes.
Representative Thomas Schofield, yes. Representative Lori Osher.
Yes.
Representative Lori Osher, yes. Representative Joseph Underwood.
Yes.
Representative Joseph Underwood, yes. Representative Scott Landry.
Yes.
Representative Scott Landry, yes. Representative William Pluker.
Yes.
Representative William Pluker, yes. Representative Jeffrey Gifford.
Yes.
Representative Jeffrey Gifford, yes. Representative David McCray.
Yes.
Representative David McCray, yes. Representative Susan Bernard.
Yes.
Representative Susan Bernard, yes. Unanimous carryover for 856.
Okay, for LD 856, the vote was to carry over, and I'll close the work session on LD 856. And that brings us down to language review. Karen.
Yeah, so on this one, this is LD 937, a resolve to facilitate the provision of incentives for soil carbon storage. I actually brought it back to the committee for language review. And that's, it's technically, it was a divided report. The majority was ought to pass as amended, which is the language I brought forward to the committee. However, the department, and I see Nancy McBrady is still with us, and maybe she can weigh in on this discussion, but so the bill as originally drafted had a report back date of, December 1st, 2021. And the department wanted more time, September 2022. And I believe it was Representative McCray said, well, we'd really like the 130th ACF committee to have a hand in this. So we, at the work session before you voted, negotiated March 1st, 2022. However, we've since heard that there may be a fiscal note because they are working on all these other initiatives, with the Maine Climate Council, et cetera. So they may need additional resources. So there may be a fiscal note if that's what the report back date is. So I think the idea was discussed, so perhaps they could give an interim report March 1st, 2022, and the 130th ACF committee could submit a bill based on that report, but then have, still have a September 2022 report. And assuming that you're adjourned and that's the true interim, you would give the 131st ACF committee authority to submit a bill based on that final report. So that was discussed, but at this point, that has not been incorporated. That would be a reconsideration of the bill, and we could amend amend the amendment, if you will.
Right. Okay, so is everybody, first I'll ask Director McBrady, are you comfortable with the end of what Karen just said, the interim report and a final report? And okay.
Yes, thank you. That was well stated, and we would certainly appreciate moving in that direction.
Okay. Committee, are you okay with changing it to that? Just kind of give me some nods and we can do that amendment. Okay, so then can I have a motion to reconsider LD 937? Representative Landry, seconded by Representative Schofield. All in favor of reconsideration, raise your hand. Nobody opposed. So I am ready for a new bill amendment. And I think all we have to do, Karen, is ought to pass as amended with what you stated. Is that correct?
Yep. It's so an
We'll
interim
make that
report March 1st and a final report September 1st, 2022.
I will move amendment as Karen just described.
Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Landry. Any further discussion? Cheryl, please call the roll.
LD 937 ought to pass as amended. Senator James Dill.
Yes.
Senator James Dill, yes. Senator Russell Black.
Yes.
Senator Russell Black, yes. Senator Chloe Maxman.
Yes.
Senator Chloe Maxman, yes. Representative Maggie O'Neill.
Yes.
Representative Maggie O'Neill, yes. Representative Randall Hall.
I'm dead again.
No, we can hear you.
You're good.
Oh, yes.
Representative Randall Hall, yes. Representative
you.
Scott Landry.
Yes.
Representative Scott Landry, yes. Representative Joseph Underwood.
Yes.
Representative Joseph Underwood, yes. Representative Thomas Schofield.
Yes.
Representative Thomas Schofield, yes. Representative Lori Osher.
Yes.
Representative Lori Osher, yes. Representative Bill Pluker.
Yes.
Representative Bill Pluker, yes. Representative Jeffrey Gifford.
Yes.
Representative Jeffrey Gifford, yes. Representative David McCray.
Yes.
Representative David McCray, yes. Representative Susan Bernard.
Yes.
Representative Susan Bernard, yes. Unanimous, ought to pass as amended.
Okay, LD 937 ought to pass as amended, unanimous. And we will back to Karen. Is there anything else for language review, Karen?
Yes. So where do I start? I guess I'll do 1159 first. And I can share my screen if that's helpful. But this is the majority report to LD 1159, an act to amend the membership requirements of the Board of Pesticides Control. So what the amendment does is, of the members of the board, the scientists from the University of Maine system, it specifies the scientists specializing in agronomy, entomology, or plant pathology. So it adds that phrase to that member. And then the two members appointed to represent the public, it retains the requirement that they have a demonstrated interest in environmental protection, and it strikes the requirement, as the original bill did, that they have practical experience and knowledge. I'm sorry, they represent different geographic areas of the state. So that's the change. It does not reinstate that requirement. And then it goes on to say, it adds that piece about, no financial interest. So purposes of the subsection, a member appointed to represent the public may not have a financial interest in the profession regulated by the board, and may not be an individual who has been or is currently licensed, certified, or given a permit in this or any other state for the profession the board regulates. So that's the amendment. And I think I ran it by Representative O'Neill by email, and I didn't hear any objection. I think you said it looked okay.
Sounds good. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so that's 1159. And then I also have language review for the bill one of the bills you voted, actually the only bill you voted last Thursday. This is the committee amendment to LD 954, an act to provide equal access to the benefits of the Made Food Sovereignty Act. I can share my screen on this one. I did run it by my legal reviewer, so we tweaked it a little bit more than what I posted on the committee webpage. So just bear with me a second. LR 1381. Oh, I'm gonna share my screen. So here's the amendment. I don't know whose phone is ringing, but
phone call.
so in section 1 of the bill, you see it retains the reference to the department's authority to implement and enforce laws governing preparation of livestock and poultry for human consumption. That's that shaded gray, except as contained in section 285. That's what it's referring to.
Excuse me, Karen.
Yeah.
I think you're not sharing the screen you think you're sharing. I'm seeing your desktop.
Oh, okay.
We're enjoying your desktop though, man.
You are? Okay. Let me try that again. Okay, now do you see it?
Thank you.
Yep, sorry about that. So the first shaded part, do you see my little arrow when I'm doing that?
Yes.
Okay, yes. So this part is referring to the laws governing preparation of livestock and poultry for human consumption. So the original bill had struck that out, and we definitely don't want to supersede that in any way and get in trouble with USDA. So we put that back in there. And then we struck that second paragraph that refers to home rule, because it doesn't really apply to plantations and unorganized territory. That applies to municipalities. So instead, it puts in the language that pursuant to 7505, which is the new ordinances authorized under the Maine Food Sovereignty Act that counties can adopt. And then it says, notwithstanding any other provision of state food law, a county may adopt ordinances regarding direct producer to consumer transactions within one or more unorganized territories within that county, and the state shall recognize such an ordinance by not enforcing those state laws with respect to the direct producer to consumer transactions that are governed by the ordinance. And then this is section 2 is actually just cleaning it up a little bit. That they're, it's not the plantation or the UT that's adopting or amending the ordinance. It's they're opting in, right? So it'd be governed by the ordinance authorized pursuant to section 284, which I just talked about. And again, in 30A 51, section 3 of the bill, this is the section that basically says plantations are, with respect to certain ordinances, plantations and municipalities are treated the same, and the universe is limited. It's, fireworks ordinances or other kinds of ordinances, animal control. And so the food sovereignty direct producer to consumer transactions would also fall under this group. So this is relating to plantations. And then in section 4, this is where it says the county commissioners of each county may adopt ordinances regarding direct producer to consumer transactions. Ordinances adopted by county commissioners govern direct consumer producer to consumer transactions in any UT within the county whose residents have opted. So I did hear that UT has to opt in. If the residents have opted to have the ordinance apply in that unorganized territory and in a manner prescribed by the commission, whatever process they currently have, would it be how they go about that. So that's what you voted on last week unanimously. Any questions?
Thank you. And yet, could you go to the notwithstanding language?
Yep, notwithstanding any provision of state food law.
And just because I'm not seeing it in the complete context, is that the same definition of state food law that exists in the Maine Food Sovereignty Act, or is that in another part of the law?
That's the same language as used in the Maine Food Sovereignty Law, yes.
So it's referring to that definition?
Yes.
Okay, great.
That's the intent.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, what else, Karen?
Okay, stop share. I have some fiscal note. All right, LD 558 is a resolve directing the department to study alternative cropping systems for farmers affected by PFAS contamination. So you've already seen the language, and there is a fiscal note required. I guess it says a minor cost increase to the general fund. Any additional costs to the department to consult with the University of Maine System, DEP, or DHHS regarding the development of a comprehensive research study plan to identify and aid farmers who are or may be affected by PFAS substances contamination are anticipated to be minor and can be absorbed within existing budgeted resources. But there still is a fiscal note required.
Okay.
And that is posted on the committee webpage. And the final one that I have is LD 568. This is the Working Farmland Access and Protection Program within the Department of ACF, and a Working Farmland Access and Protection Fund within the LMF program. So there is a fiscal note required. Oh, and I did want to show you there's been a technical change made to the bill. I will show you. 568. And I'll share my screen, and hopefully the right one. That's not the right one. Okay, sorry. Okay, so are you seeing LD 568 committee amendment?
We're seeing 568, yes.
Okay,
Looks
so
like
what
the
I
original.
just wanted to show you, it's gonna, it's just a technical change because LD 65 added paragraph D, and 568, that striking of paragraph C was actually in the original bill. So it's not really the amendment, but for technical reasons, because we have to update the history line as amended by Public Law 2021, Chapter 33, which is the changes that LD 65 made. That's why you're going to see it in your committee amendment. So this is really just technical. The revisor's office caught it. But when you look at lines 7 through 8. Paragraph I is really what your amendment did for language. It said your amendment wanted consideration given to whether the applicant is from or serving an underserved or underprivileged community as defined by department by rule. So that's what the amendment did. And there is a fiscal note required. And the fiscal note is really, it puts in the $500 placeholder. The department has indicated that it will not require additional staffing at this time. The bill includes ongoing other special revenue fund allocations of $500 starting in fiscal year ending 22 to establish this main working farmland access and protection fund within the department. So really it has a fiscal note just because it has that $500 placeholder for now. Any questions?
Any questions for Karen?
I have one.
Luker? Yep.
So it crosses out section C and replaces it with D. Is that what is going on there?
No, no. It's so what happened. So section C was crossed out in the original LD.
Okay.
So that's not really part of your amendment, but now it's part of your technical amendment because the history line had to be updated and paragraph D was added by LD 65. So because we're updating the history line with the public law 2021 chapter 33 to make sure, you know, for engrossing purposes that it's all there and they don't wonder if you mean one or the other. You want to make sure that both move forward, both changes to that section move forward.
Thank you.
Myself
we worked in the same area of law and we want to make sure that this is working the same, reflecting the changes we made somewhere else.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So it's really more technical in nature, but I wanted to show you because your amendment will look a little different than it was when you last reviewed it. That's all I have for today.
Thank you. Anything from you, Cheryl?
Nope, all set. Thank you.
Representative O'Neill, anything from you? Nope. Representative Underwood, I see your hand up.
Do I need to vote on LD 657? I think it is.
You did already.
Okay, thank you.
So I do have one more thing. On the bill that we voted to re-refer, the initiated bill.
Right.
So I did send an email. I wondered if if we did it right because it's jointly referred to both committee, ACF and EUT. So it is. It might be a better process if we do the procedure of change of reference, which is unique to this session because of, you know, that super order that you all passed earlier, maybe even back in December. So because technically it's referred to both committees, it is a little odd to just have the ACF committee vote separately from EUT. So the change of reference process might be cleaner, better one in this case.
Is that the letter?
So that's, yeah, the form that, I don't know if it's just the chairs or chairs and leads of both committees fill out. And it doesn't have to go on the calendar like, you know, re-referral would. So you could do it without worrying about making the calendar tomorrow.
Okay, so I think the situation is that since we all voted, therefore the chairs and leads voted to do it too. So you've already got the information you need. So it depends on what the process is. Is that basically what you're telling us?
Well, I think the vote is more like a straw vote, if you will. It's not, it can't be a report of the committee because right now it's jointly referred to both committees.
Right. So what you're saying is probably the chairs and leads, which we just agreed to sending it to one, that committee also has to do the same thing.
Yes, but it would be, you know, it wouldn't be a vote to re-refer. It would be the change of reference process.
Yep. Okay. Sounds good.
Okay, so I'll work with Cheryl and she can get that form ready for you.
Yep. Good enough. Thank you. Anything else from anyone? Seeing none, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I have one more
Yep,
thing.
hold it. Look, Cheryl.
Oh, never mind. You're answering it now. Never mind.
Okay. Motion to
I'll move
adjourn.
to adjourn, Senator Dill.
All right. Is there a second? All over the place. Everybody, thank you.
See everybody tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye.